Welcome everyone to the last group of the round of 16. The last two players are going to be determined. Whoever makes it into the round of 8. And then 2 more players will be disappointed as they will be knocked out of GSL and have to wait for Season 3, which is confirmed and is happening this year. But nonetheless, people are looking to advance even further. If you would like to support GSL, as they have taken the heaviest hits due to the budget complete withdrawal, I suppose, from Blizzard. So if you do want to support them, patreon.com/GSL. You can also get your hands on these replays. I believe some behind-the-scenes interviews, as well as some other kind of knickknacks that they've included. So spiel over. Now we can get into the series. For the first preliminary match, we do have top left Cure versus bottom right Astrea. So we do have another non-Korean participating. Unfortunately, spoiler alert, if you didn't watch Group C, which you kind of already know where I'm going. It wasn't much of a spoiler alert. Special didn't actually get it out of the group. He did lose, despite a very solid performance versus Dark in particular. Versus Gumiho is a little less so, but yeah, that was unfortunate. So no non-Koreans advancing so far. We'll see if Astrea can mix things up. Astrea has come up from his rumored... slump isn't really the right word, but he was not practicing as much as he would usually right after Katowice, so there were some doubts as to his performance for the first regional of North America. And while I do believe strongly that he was showing some of that lack of practice in the beginning of the regionals, which lasted 3 weeks, he did actually end up winning it, so I think he's pretty okay. And then he has had some solid performances in the tournaments since then, so... basically Yangchping, actually. He did not attend Home Story Cup because he did want to go to Korea and play in the qualifiers, which he did, and he actually did fine with. The you could have gone to Home Story Cup and play the qualifiers online, or maybe you could have gotten back in time to play, but it would have been really annoying. I don't remember which one it is, because Gumiho was at Home Story Cup, but yet he also was in just Group C, actually, as well. So I don't remember exactly what happened there, but basically we had 2 non-Koreans go to Korea to play in GSL as the priority, and not go to Home Story Cup, and, well, at least 2, I should say, and 2 of those that I know about are Astrea and Scarlet. Scarlet didn't actually make it through the qualifiers, Astrea did. So he is our last hope. But he is facing Cure first and foremost. I think this is a really, really troublesome first match for him. This is a very good Terran who has only occasionally looked a little weaker. There has been times where it's like, oh, is he okay? Like his TVZ, I'm still not the biggest fan of, but it's solid enough, right? But definitely his TVP is like the best. Literally, I think it is the best, and again, the matchup is proving a little bit difficult for a lot of Protoss. Astrea has managed to rise above some other Protoss in his performances in this matchup, but nonetheless, it is a difficult one, and just the most difficult against Cure, because his win record in this matchup is like 85% or something. And only some of those victories are from kind of no-name Protosses that you expect him to win against, you know? Like, lots of that is from very, very, very good Protoss. It's fortunate that Astrea did open up with a hallucination. As he is going into a Stargate, he would have eventually gotten a Scout. So that might seem a bit of a redundancy, right? But in this case, specifically, the hallucination is very important for detecting whether or not it's a 3-racks or a 1-1-1. Now, an Adept opener might have also been able to do so, just kind of picked up on the amount of Marines, the lack of any Widowmine defense, but it's not 100% that an Adept pressure would have done that. So Astrea really wanted to play it quite safe. So the hallucination comes out. Now he can respond a bit more appropriately to the 3-racks now that he knows for a fact that it is on the way. And with all that information so quickly gathered, I don't think Astrea should be taking a lot of damage here. In fact, Cure, having known he saw the hallucination, he knows that he was scouted, might not actually even be so eager to really push with this. He's going to, of course, go across the map and wave his hands around and ooga booga, but it's not supposed to do a whole lot if the Protoss is, well, frankly, well, competent maybe is too harsh of a word, but if the Protoss is prepared, they should be able to handle this. That doesn't mean that it's easy. That's why I didn't want to use the word competent. It isn't easy. basically deciphering exactly when to move out and stay defensive is where things still really get difficult for the Protoss, but as far as a 2-base defense setup, they're usually okay. Stasis Trap is here, but so far being avoided. Actually, I think at the last second, Kira might have realized it was there. I'm not, yeah, I think that was just a last-second pullback. Because if he did realize it was there, he would have microed a Marine for it, right?
Forces detected.
So he still
Army
manages to avoid
defensive.
the catastrophe, which would be getting 50% of his army caught in a stasis trap. Then the other 50% would have been easily killed by Astrea's army. The other 50 gets unlocked, and that also gets killed. That could have actually been a straight-up disaster for Cure in that exact right scenario. But instead, he manages to avoid, and he did just do the kind of hand-waving, like, you gotta be scared of me. And Astrea did have to be scared, but very appropriate defense. 2 Immortals, handful of Adepts, Guardian Shield, and a Shield Battery that was waiting for an overcharge. Or did he get overcharged? Yeah, just waiting for one. So pretty solid. And then a very quick move over into that 3rd base. I think Astrea maybe even sent 2 probes. I wasn't sure about this, so I was talking about other things, but he might have even sent 2 probes, one to the right, one to the left, to see if one of them could stay alive to get that Nexus down as quickly as possible, because I did see Kier move over to the right and kill something. Not 100% sure about that, but that would be a nice maneuver, because I think the real complication, once you realize it's the 3 racks, is how do you move beyond defending the 3 racks, because they could just leave and come back with a very, very large Bioforce. Thank you, Jason, for the raid, by the way. A little bit of an AI problem. That's what it looked like. Not sure where else he'd be moving his army over there. So a couple of quick force fields punish Kira a little bit. Astrea so far with a great defense, a real understanding of the problems of this particular matchup and build order. Kira, it's not like he's really done anything wrong so far, and he does still have one of the bigger attacks. So he's still up about 10 army supply. And he does still have a little bit mobility. If he manages to find Astrea out of position. Like, the 5 Phoenix that were created after that Oracle should be enough to deter Cure from trying to utilize these medevacs, especially because you don't have that many. That's really a downside of the 3 racks, right? It's not very high technology. No siege tanks, no Widow Mines, and very few medevacs, which might also mean very few Vikings, which with Astrea going into Colossus means these Colossus have no strong counter. So as long as Astrea is in a very proper position and, again, is warding away the drops so that he never has to split his army and get kind of in a complicated scenario, Astrea should be locked up nice and tight on 3 bases. He is now moving over into a Twilight Council after also finally establishing a forge and getting an upgrade there. So Kira's going to take what he can get, which is an assimilator, which is something. It's not the worst, but Cure is moving smoothly along to 3cc. Vikings still not on the way, actually. 6 medevacs is a pretty healthy number. He could start building Vikings. He built medevacs, canceled them as he realized again. So he is building Vikings, and he's also getting a Ghost Academy. His 3 base is saturated after all. He has taken no harassment damage. He doesn't have to worry about anything coming across the map because Astrea has been totally defensive, which isn't wrong. Just kind of the consequence of the way that these builds have worked out against each other. So Cure, despite not being able to really pressure Astrea, is not in any, again, worse for wear, really. He's still been able to do his thing and get his macro up, and that's still very scary for Astrea, who, again, is facing probably the world's best TVP player. Tough first draw. So the 3rd CC already being saturated and just smoothly gotten to means that these Vikings and Ghosts come along, and Cure doesn't even really have to be looking for a fight until he is like maxed out with Ghost and Vikings. So he's not going into that more mass bio concentration with a lot of maneuvering that we were seeing Gumiho, for the most part, do in Group C. Now he's actually more so getting up to that almost perfect army. It's yeah, pretty much perfect. I mean, the Viking count's going to have to increase eventually, but Ghost, Bio, Medevac, Viking, right? That's pretty much where the Terran ends up being in this matchup. For Astrea, should be moving over to Disruptors, and that's exactly what he's doing. He did go up to 4 Colossus, which perhaps is making a bit of a comeback. It did feel like the Protoss players, oh, this might be a little bit scary. Yeah, Astrea thought that was okay, but it was turning sour on him, almost. Yeah, it looked like 3 Colossus might be the new meta, and for about a year and a half, I think it was, but it seems to be getting back into 4. You'd have to ask the Protoss players why that has changed ever so slightly. But going into Disruptor is definitely a good play. Even if his 4th base doesn't get established ASAP, then Kira is doing a good job making sure that Astrea just can't take bases all willy-nilly. He's probably okay, because there hasn't been a lot of trading going on. So building up a maxed out army of pretty sufficient technology for a Protoss player is possible on Legacy of the Void 3 bases, as long as there's not a lot of trading. If this was way more back and forth, it'd be way more difficult. Zealots run by, attempted at the 3rd, also into the main base with the War Prism, and Cure is out of position for the main. Astrea really has found himself in one of the better spots for Protoss players, surviving until he's almost maxed out with the upgrades, with the Disruptors, even Dark Shrine on the way. The only thing right now he is missing is that Blink, but with Phoenix still around, 6 of them actually, they're even contesting the Vikings. Cure is kind of feeding off units without finding much success. He's really just kind of waffling almost. His defense of the Zealot run-by is subpar so far. His 13 SCVs have gone down. More Zealots see the opportunity to warp in as the reinforcements are simply not enough. The Ghosts are coming up to the high ground now, and they could probably get some snipes off to save some of these upgrade buildings, but actually Astrea realizes it's not going to work out. He's not going to be able to cancel these upgrades as the repair did happen, at least on the engineering bay. I'm not sure about the armory. Meanwhile, there was an attack that manages to grab 1 Colossus, but not quite the 2nd. That was the weakened Colossus from earlier, and Astrea knows there's going to be more than 1 attack at any given point, so he does have an arsenal on the right side, but this particular army here is very disruptor-based, which means that it's, you know, it's 1 shot, and maybe you push the bio away, but if it doesn't shoot, guarantee the Terran is counting the shots, right? If they realize they have an opportunity to pounce on a disruptor-only army, they will probably take it. However, at 7 disruptors, assuming Astrea doesn't panic, that would buy a lot of time. And that's exactly what happened. So Astrea able to deflect the left side with a very solid, consistent type of army, Zealots and Colossus, right? Just don't let them derp. And on the right side is able to micro those disruptors well enough to hold on. Astrea's supply might not look like the best, but I think his situation is kind of promising. If he gets a little bit more on the fodder here, just a couple more stalkers, actually, really needs to bolster that stalker count, then he should be okay. The DT's coming in, and DT Blink was immediately gotten, as well as also a new fear for Cure. He once again takes 13 workers of damage. However, those Phoenix, which were still useful, were definitely on patrol in a very vulnerable area. They get taken down. Astrea now no longer with an easy defense of the main base. Those medevacs could actually fly in. Cure so far not taking the opportunity. Also doesn't realize that Astrea is going for an attack. Now, again, this is not as scary of an army as it might appear. If Kira can get a concave or, God forbid, a surround, then the disruptors will look very, very poor. Kira is not going to try and return home at all. Instead, going to go for the base trade, realizing that Astrea's army is not particularly good when it comes to being fast. Because the disruptors have to really weigh their shots, and they don't, you know, they don't want to use them on structures, right, either. Or they really don't want to use them on SCVs, too. This is not the best base trade army. Astrea tries to force the issue, but a pickup solves all the problems here. Recall is going to have to be used before the back attack came in at the very least, so more of the army is saved. But Astrea has lost the Nexus, he's lost his Colossus, disruptors are not shooting, and Cure dominates this base trade. Astrea wanted to apply the pressure since he had gotten to more of that Stalker Disruptor composition, but I think he needed to ward away a few more attacks and get a little bit more of that map vision to actually know their circumstances. You know, he had no idea where Kier was trying to position his army. And, you know, perhaps if Astrea knew for a fact that Kier's army was here and there, he would have been a little more hesitant to go into that base trade on the 3rd. Perhaps if he knew that Kier was way off to the right side and way off to the left, or, again, he had repelled both attacks previous to his counter, that might have been better. But he kind of forced an issue, and Kier didn't fall for, I suppose, the not exactly trick, but he didn't find himself in a vulnerable scenario, which would have been all tightly packed up in his natural, scared to death, right? He had his army on the map, he was trying to get some concaves, trying to get some surrounds, and yeah, Astrea just maybe not choosing the right time to strike. Still a promising game overall. Let's see if Astrea can take down this TVP master. In the bottom right of game 2 on Babylon, we have Cure, and on the top left, we have Astrea. So like I said, Astrea had a very promising beginning and middle TVP. I think what happened was that he got a little overeager trying to be the map controller Protoss once he got to Blinkstalker Disruptor, which he hadn't even really gotten to, I would argue with. He was still at the point of splitting his army to try and deflect multiple engagements from the Terran, which... I'm not saying the choice to be aggressive is necessarily always a bad idea. I think there's very similar games in which the choice to be aggressive has probably worked out positively for Astrea. The Terran player kind of panics a little bit more and pulls all the armies back, and then Astrea kind of reads the cues and recalls in a more appropriate way so that his fourth base is still alive because Kier's panicking about going back home. But I do think that with Kier's confidence in the matchup and, again, the positioning of his army, it was more a gamble than perhaps other games that Astrea had played in, again, similar situations. It's maybe generally high risk, high reward, but I feel like in that particular game, it was higher risk, okay reward. Yeah, with the way that that army ended up playing out, it was still, again, basically disruptor-based without very much else supporting it, which really makes using that army tricky. It's only an intimidating army when the Terran player is scared and holed up in their natural with all of their units bunched up. So, I feel like if Astrea gets to a similar situation, he again survives to the 4-base setup of a Protoss without being severely injured, I think that he'll be playing that a little more conservatively. He'll probably wait to either have more observers on the field, more map control, or at least map vision, and then turn it into map control, or he will wait to deflect a couple of more drops and try to more so find Cure in a transition point for him as well, you know, transition over to Liberators. But we'll see. First, we have to get to that 4-base setup. Actually, this time around, Astrea going to be a little bit more aggressive. Proxy Gateway is coming down after a very fast Adept across the map. Very different from the last game.
Resubscription received.
Or, well,
apparently you are doing something right, Captain.
It is different. But the Adept into Sentry is not different. So the Adept just managed to get over here a little bit faster and actually get that SCV kill. However, the Adept itself dies, which I don't believe was Astrea's plan. That maybe could have escaped, and then it would have joined up with more army units for this 2-gate Robo Twin. I'm actually not sure what this is. I think what Astrea is going to do is go for Adept drop? Wait, no? Yes? Adept or Stalker drops, but, you know, Harassment into, I'm guessing, I actually have no idea. Is he going to do a charge all in? I'm just going to wait. I'm going to stop guessing. Smog was innocent for the 19 months. Yeah, very interesting build. You know, MaxPax has been doing a lot of early 3 gates into Blink, so I know about that one, but that's not this. 3 Adepts do get into the natural, and they're killing a decent amount of SCVs. They scouted the drop, and they don't know what it is, but it is a Marine drop. So Astrea should have some units prepared back at home as soon as his warp gates are on cooldown, or off cooldown, and there you go. Not a lot of units, though. A couple of units were left back at home, and it looks like just with the response, and I believe that was a recall. Yeah, that will be plenty of units. But Astrea's plans are kind of foiled, yes? Oh, okay. I should have thought about this. A Dark Shrine following things up. Astrea trying to get that Proxy Gateway to provide a lot of pressure and a lot of, I guess, defense from Cure, so that perhaps Cure was thinking primarily about that and not about what the follow-up could be. Perhaps would also be a little scared to get into a Raven, which is kind of a support unit, right?
I'm in a heap of trouble.
If this was going to be a like a charge on or a 48 or something, then maybe the Raven is the most useful. But the Raven does come down a lot in CVPs nowadays, and particularly for Koreans who are rather insistent on the Raven if they go for a 1-1-1, which Kira has. So this Dark Shrine plan is looking quite bad, especially now that it's been scouted. War Prism in the main with some Adepts. Once again trying to kill some Adepts. Kill some workers. But they see that there is a Raven, and that's already slightly bad news. So Raven is not the only thing you need for the defense. It needs to be in position. It needs to have units helping, which are a little suspect. For instance, if 3 ADTs warped in from the War Prism without the Cyclone in position, then the Cyclone dies. Because it's not controlled. And then there's only tanks, which are very slow responding to DTs. The DTs start spreading themselves around. Like, it can create a lot of problems, but this really is one of the worst possible scenarios for Astrea. He's taken damage. His early game aggression didn't really get the momentum he was looking for, and Cure is obviously going to be very well prepared against DTs because he has 2 Ravens, not just 1. So usually you hope to at least catch something out of position, and that just can't happen. And it's not like 2 Ravens is all that bad to have. Arguably, it never was. If you really wanted to make that case, you could. But certainly with the cheapened Raven, it's really not a bad idea. And if you know 100% that your opponent's going into DTs, I would say double Raven. It's probably never bad. So Astrea's going to go into an Archon Charge Lot all-in follow-up, which I think is very classic and a little unexpected because it is so old school. He's also bringing along 2 Immortals, so a little bit different than some of the older builds. But again, Kira seems pretty well defended. It looks like he was already on guard against Charge. The wall also does help against DTs, so either or both doesn't matter. The point is it's going to help now against the Charge Lots, and he's even fulfilling the wall as he realizes what exactly is going on. This is not his entire army. He is still wary of a potential War Prism attack in the main base. And I do love this War Prism Immortal mic. Well, I love the idea of the micro. That was a little weird, though. He drops them out premature, so they take a shot, lose the barrier, and then take another shot, which I don't think was the ideal situation. This one, in fact, almost dead. Couple of Archons included in the mix with all these charge lots. Could get a couple of really great blasts on the Marine count, but they do need to actually reach the Marines. Kira also never withdrew his medevac, which is continuing to do damage as the probes have nothing defending them. And an auto turret actually is 1 Raven went across the map. We do have the bust. Kira didn't actually raise his supply depots. This is why things are getting a little bit more difficult for him. That's actually very, very odd. I'm not saying that he would have 100% defended his natural if the supply depots were up, but it would have given him a little bit more standing on the low ground before having to retreat to the high ground. It is what it is. Cure is still up 4 workers, however, and with double mule as his orbital is alive. Oh, and his probe's still taking damage. I think that Cure is still making the better moves here. It's a bit more complicated than most TVPs that Cure plays, but with the high ground now, there you go, properly protected. Wood mines aplenty. I do believe Cure is settled on this high ground and will eventually settle back on 2 bases. Astrea does have a 3rd nexus. It's actually completed. That is a good sign for Astrea if he can go ahead and get back to building probes. But the auto turret and medevac combination really did ruin his chances of being able to play this out macro-wise in a good sense. Had he not lost 28 probes and instead had lost 17, which I think is possible, then clearly he is ahead. Cure's evacuation of the natural and perhaps subpar defense of this all-in follow-up would have been troublesome. But the backstabs were very important. They will continue as well as the Raven has still not been taken care of. No Stargate to fully take care of that. And even a medevac drop across the field forcing a recall so now that Cure can take his 2 bases. Once again, now down 5 workers, okay. He still has double mule to make up for that. Doesn't have to hold on to scans because he still has his Ravens. Religious Turtle, thank you for the 37 months. Overall, you know, it is a bit of a weirder game, but I really think that Astrea's drastic probe loss has ruined his chances of winning this. It does seem like without the additional harassment that happened during his all-in, it does seem like he would be very far ahead. I'm guessing he would be up to something like 55 or 60 probes even, without the straight-up probe losses or the distraction as well, right? But he's not. So Cure certainly has a game to play out here and certainly has a strong army, especially if he ever gets EMPs. He does have all of his upgrades and is working on that +1 attack. Meanwhile, Astrea still has no access to a forge. He might be putting down one soon, but he really needs stronger army units. As you know, Archons are decent, but he can't get that many of them. Charge lots can be masked, but Cure has been building up a lot of Widow Mines, and an anti-armor missile plus a couple of auto turrets would really do a lot of damage. to the Protoss army. The auto turrets would force the charge lots to waste charge on them. They have high priority. Interference is on Colossus and well, anything, I guess. Colossus, Archons, Immortals, you name it. And of course, an anti-armor missile and everything would boost Kira's upgrade difference. So I'm saying Kira has a very good chance to kill Astrea right now, which is why Astrea is prioritizing the development of his army size rather than trying to invest a little bit more into the future with an upgrade. I do think a Warp Prism harass is very much necessary, even just a couple of Zealots. I don't think he meant to hold this from that one. Is something. It's better than nothing. But Kira even has his 3rd CC up and running as well. I guess he actually snuck that in when I wasn't looking, to be honest. So he's not even just on 2, he's on 3. So he's really well matched on the economy. And again, his upgrade finishing up with his Widowmine count, with his Raven full on energy, 4 medevacs also full of juice, and potentially ghosts on the way momentarily. Astrea's army is looking a little bit flimsy. If it's all together with no distractions and the shield battery overcharge using a choke, you know, Protoss are pretty good at holding there. But if Kira manages to get anything else happening, so these drops get in, the Raven auto turret harassment, the army separated, Kira might have an opportunity to move in here and engage. And by the way, that drop did kill 12 more probes. 1 medevac full of units still alive, which is still enough to threaten that main base. It looks like Kira's actually respecting the size of Astrea's army. He has pulled back, and he might be right about that. Kind of would be dependent on whether or not the Widowmines actually get the good shots, where the Raven actually impacted the battle, and I'm not even sure where it is. Oh, different hotkey and not being controlled. Fortunately for Kira, I didn't see that. That is very lucky. I feel like this is... that, like, the rest of this game is not me playing, but this Raven being left in the middle of nowhere is definitely a move I would do. Love the Widowmine plus missile turret. This is a very big problem for, of course, observers, but it is also a problem for even the Colossus, honestly. If they spend time wasting shots on the missile turret, that is good news. 15 more probes went down to a Widowmine drop, I believe, and perhaps the other drop finally came in. 1 Raven did die as well, so it looks like Kira did actually spend everything he had on the other side of the map, but it did get some damage done, and now it's just whether or not he can actually defend. You don't see hallucinated depths very often, but I guess that is a thing. EMP is not going down, as Kira was not quite paying attention. Seems like he was distracted by the main, or had just watched his drops die or something. Like, that was a little bit late to the trigger pull there. But it looks like Astrea's supply is kind of telling the tale more so. Now, a lot of that is in workers, but 20 of it is nonetheless still in army as well. And that is not a good sign for Astrea, who really need to do a lot more damage with that. And it was a disastrous attack when Kira, again, was a little late to actually responding. I mean, that's triple whammy. Like, that's not a good feeling for Astrea, who, once again, he doesn't lose 58 probes. He takes 50% less damage on every single harass that Kira has sent his way, so he's only lost 29 probes. I feel like Astrea's won this game already. You know, the game plan does make a lot of sense, and despite Kira having pretty good foresight, you know, he saw what he needed to see to then guess, like, an all-in was on the way, and, like, he knew it was coming. He still had trouble against it. And the only way that he's managed to make it look even for a lot of this game was those drops, and now, of course, he's just straight up ahead. That's kind of disappointing, because now it's just going to look like Astrea's just getting bopped, when I don't think that's really true. But it does look like bopping is about to happen. Astrea's army is still very flimsy, no upgrades, so the charge lots will melt. This Kira does have that +1 and EMPs, possibly anti-armor missile as well. There you have it. About half the army AA'd. Disruptors are going to try and buy some time, but we don't have enough of them. Only 2 on the field right now. 1 used its shot. Where is the other one coming down now? Shield by overcharge going to very much help this army, keeping the Colossus alive. Oh, great disruptor shot. I think Kira moved in to try and actually kill that, but that was not a good plan there, as the Colossus do finally start to fall. It looks like Kira might still be able to win anyways. The Marauders actually just barely living through most of this fight. A lot of them were on red, but nothing was there to actually get that final killing blow. Astrea is the one that still comes out down in supply after everything. Still no upgrades on the way and having to rebuild some of his more expensive, slow-building units, his Colossus and his Disruptors. And while Disruptors are the Hail Mary unit, so we might just go ahead and just pump out Disruptors, Colossus would actually still be very helpful. They're still very consistent at, well, they're just consistent units, right? You know they're going to do damage. You know they're a prime target, but I guess the problem there is that 5 Vikings did end up still surviving the fights or reinforcing what have you, so yeah, he doesn't really have the ability to just stand with Colossus. He'd always have to have the Stalkers counter microing, which he clearly does not have enough Stalkers to do, so Disruptors really are the only play, which means that he is going to be vulnerable to drops, multitasking, 2 or 3 attacks at a time, or just simply being overwhelmed. Kira is going on to 4 bases, lots of extra production, and a 50 supply lead. So that is it. Kira will take a 2-0 beating down the foreigner, as the Koreans often do. But I don't think this series was as one-sided as it might have appeared. Astrea definitely had some good ideas, but Kira really is, I mean, one of the best. Even when TVPs got scrappy in the past, before Protoss were having such evident troubles. Kira would always manage to bring it out, so he's just a tough first opponent. So we'll move on to the winners match, and Astrea will have a second chance in the losers. And now on to the second preliminary match. In the bottom right, we have Ryung. In the top left, it is Solar. Unfortunately, I think it's another mismatched first match for a player here. In the last one, it was Astrea getting mismatched because Kira's TVP is probably the best in the world, so pretty unlucky there. If he had perhaps had the momentum of defeating a Ryung or a Solar first, that might have been a little different, but even then, still very difficult. And then we now have Ryung versus Solar, and Ryung, while being a surprisingly good player, despite his kind of, am I a pro gamer? Am I not? Am I full-time? Am I not? Am I a coach? Am I a full-time? Am I casting with Crank? Like, you know, he's kind of all over the place for the last couple of years. He is a very good player when it comes to TVT, which he's always been very good at, and I guess kind of the bones of the matchup haven't really changed all that much. That kind of makes sense. And he's also been very good at TVP in the last couple of years. His ability to, let's just say, max out, which sounds very simple, but still, his ability to max out with bio and get concaves and surrounds was very impressive for some of his matches in the last 2 years. What he isn't good at is TVZ. And I'm saying this, I meant to say it prior to his proxy being found, which is not a good start. So this would be a disaster for anyone, even those who are particularly good at TVZ. But yeah, Ryung, even if he was playing the most straight-up game ever, I don't think he would win against Solar. I think even if this did manage to complete and he got a little bit of a boost in the early game, because Solar was surprised, I still don't think he would win. I'm actually kind of a hater on Ryung's TVZ, as sad as that is to say, because I think that he's always been a really fun guy to watch. He's always been a really nice guy as well. I've actually gotten to meet him a couple of times because I hang out with Olivia, who's married to Crank, who hangs out with Ryung all the time. I don't want to say he's bad, but his TVZ, I don't know. I guess it's plagued him for years, in fact. If I'm going to be heavily dramatic here, you know, he was in his prime when Broodlord Infestor was also in its prime, which meant that despite being one of the world's best Terrans in the year 2011-2012, around both years around that time, he wasn't actually winning championships. The infamous Imba comes to mind. I do say that's a bit of a dramatic narrative because I think Ryung has won tournaments and has had times where he has good TVZ and the matchup isn't broken in favor of the Zerg, but if you just slice it a certain way, you can really make this narrative that Ryung's unlucky in TVZ. I don't know if he's unlucky in love, but he is unlucky in TVZ. And the unluckiness continues as that proxy got found out. He turns it into a 1-Rax expand, which I think is fine. The fact that his wall-off wasn't complete very quickly is of no issue, as Solar did not do anything particularly aggressive. He just said, oh, there's a proxy, I'm going to go deal with that, and then he just went into a macro game, which is kind of par for the course for Solar. I expect to be playing mostly macro. There's really no reason for him to cheese out Ryung. I don't think it's a personal opinion or a secret, as much as it is actually just a thing. It's kind of a fact that Ryung's TVZ is not his best. Not to say that he just gets totally obliterated every single time he faces a good Zerg player. There's a little bit back and forth, and he does have really clever builds. He definitely likes thinking about how to catch a Zerg player off guard. But for the most part, he just can't really stand up to the pace set by modern TVZ. I think that it's actually the problem. I don't know if it's necessarily mechanics, just that the kind of ebb and flow and pacing and whatever you want to call it of the matchup has changed a lot since his prime. He has gone into a 2-1-1, which is very classic, a very old style of playing, because it is a 2-base 2-1-1. But this is clearly a trying to get back to your path to your destination, you know? Google Maps right now is yelling at Ryung, like, get back on track, because that proxy didn't work out. So I can't really blame him. I think this might have been his ultimate end goal, but with a little bit more here and there anywhere with that proxy. Perhaps it wasn't his end goal, but he's like, oh, I don't know what to do now. So it's a typical 2-on-1. And the reason I'm saying this is kind of like it's a bad thing is because it's really not that good of a build. It's been heavily figured out, and the only reason we do see like the 3cc 2-1-1 is that at least with the 3cc, you kind of get the power of the economy behind the, what I would say, light aggression a 2-1-1 gives, because Zerg players are so good against it now. So you're like, well, yeah, I don't expect the first 16 Marines to do a whole lot, but it's not as important because I have a 3cc behind it. There are also some other examples of 2-1-1s leading into a 2-base push, for instance, from Beyond. But I think he also gets that control with the 2 barracks opener a little bit better, and frankly is just a bit of a wizard when it comes to rolling out of awkward scenarios in TVZ. Ryung is not a wizard. He's got a big brain, he's a good coach, but he's not a wizard like Byeon is. So TLDR, I think this is a very, very unfortunate circumstance for Ryung, who really needs to do damage with these first 16 Marines, and Overlord does not count, even though it did supply block Solar. Solar has the appropriate defense and is even maybe over-defended. You don't actually need these Banelings for the first attack. The Lings and Queens will deal with it, but Banelings do ensure the defense. Really no issues if you have a couple of Banelings. And you do need Banelings for the follow-up, and you also need to know what the follow-up is. It looks like Ryung is going to continue trying to bring out some of the older builds, which have sometimes come back into play. I feel like on Babylon... No, not Babylon. What map am I thinking of? I feel like there was a map in the last map pool in which we, at the beginning of the map pool. So, like a year and a half ago. Because our map pools last forever. There were examples of 2-base all-ins being done from even the likes of Maru. So, like, the 2-base all-in does reappear every now and again, but it is out of the meta again. So, Ryung is doing something a little unorthodox and, frankly, a little subpar. I think the reason it comes back into the fold every now and again is that it is a surprise, and some of the maps really make it very good. I'm not sure that's the case for this map pool, or in particular this map. Gresvan does have the very obnoxious, abusive tank zone right here, the well, but Zerg players have become very good, very adjusted to dealing with that, whether it's a 2-base push or a 3-base push. And I feel like Solar is mostly prepared. He does need to buy time for centrifugal hooks, and he would love to have that +1 carapace down as well. But run buys to buy time are excellent. The run buys clearly not going to be doing a whole lot of damage, but it means that some units have to stay at home. It means that the wall has to be consistently lowered and put up again to make sure the run buys don't do any damage. And if Ryung does plan on trying to move out of this with a 3cc, which he does, he also has to be worried about actually establishing a 3rd CC. In the ebb and flow of TVZ, Solar over-defending could be an issue, as Ryung has forced Solar to really drastically defend this. Solar can't get confirmation on whether or not this is truly all-in or not. Recent history of Terran versus Zerg would give him the expectation of it going into a 3rd CC. This would be very similar to facing Byeon, but again, I think Byeon would have done things a little bit differently and just frankly a little bit better. Tank gets surrounded. Banelings almost connect with the Marines. Ryung does manage to save those, but overall, this attack not doing very much, and then actually getting Phalanx with the Marines. And now the problem is that, yeah, okay, the Zerg players not many drones, that's fantastic, but are you actually able to defend their counterattack? Now they are the bigger bullies on the field, even off of creep. So you need to be very careful, and as you go and defend and get all holed up on your defenses, then the Zerg player is like, la 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 la, Zerg, 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 drone, drone, drone. And that's exactly what Solar is doing, getting all those drones that he was missing out on from earlier, establishing the creep spread that was lost from earlier, which actually wasn't too bad. It's already being reestablished anyways. And then also teching up, because he did also only go for one evolution chamber, so certainly Solar had to make sacrifices to deal with the build Ryung has thrown at him, but I just had the utmost confidence from start to finish that Solar was going to deal with it. In fact, I would usually have the utmost confidence for Solar dealing with this type of shenanigans. The only person that I would be bringing up a lot of caveats and what-ifs and stuff about would be Bjorn. Or Maru, because, you know, Maru's Maru, right? But Bjorn's, like, so more likely to do a build like this. So, yeah. But that's the only person that I'd be like, I'm scared for Solar. For Solar, he is one of the best Zergs in Korea. I know I said Dark is the best Zerg, and I personally would hold that opinion, but I would respect someone arguing with me for sure. And especially because Solar does have the recent Home Story Cup results where he got to the finals and almost brought it back, too. To, I guess, give us more confidence that he's playing very, very well, right? There's been only one time that Solar, I would say, was actually kind of slumping. Not a bad game or a bad series, and that was last year's Valencia. Otherwise, Solar is a very, very dependable Zerg. And a little bit of splash on the Medivacs, actually, as Solar doesn't really mind the loss of his Lings, at least so far. Let's see what these other Widowmines can do. Nope, none of them really connecting. Ryung is trying to keep up the pressure, but frankly, Solar is just eating him for breakfast. Like pressure? I eat pressure for breakfast. And that's Solar. As he also takes down a couple of Medivacs, really setting Ryung back home. Ryung, he's getting to a 4th base. I mean, he's playing out TVZ. There's really nothing wrong with the way that Ryung's playing. There's also nothing particularly inspirational or impressive, right? So, let's see if perhaps a more like late game turtle might be where Ryung finds a little bit more. If that is his plan, I'm not sure that it is. Solar is going into a hive and a lurker den, as well as finally establishing 2-2 upgrades. So he's on track there, and has, again, some decent creep spread. 5 bases set up, as this base is not going to be threatened anytime soon. Ryung has moved over into doing a couple of drops, one on the left, one on the right. Fairly sizable one on the right, actually. More than Solar might be expecting, but Solar is not really doing anything with his army except defending, so it is only a matter of seconds before he responds to these attacks. As long as the creep spread is showing him and an overlord's over here, he should be Gucci. Ryung has his 4th base down, turning into a planetary momentarily. Drilling claws on the way. Additional marauders also on the way, so we should also have, additional barracks. It's actually a little surprising. I didn't realize he's always had 2 tech labs, or maybe he didn't. Maybe he swapped at some point. Because he definitely was only Marine tank for a while, like you would expect. I don't know where the 2nd tech lab came in. But when you do go up to 8 barracks in TVZ, you do add on tech labs. It's just usually those are the 3 tech labs. A minor point, but I'm just a little... Don't know where that came from. Ryung is moving over into, I think, more of that Turtle Terran. The last couple of months, we've actually been seeing far more aggressive late-game Terrans, not the hole up on 5 bases with 2 planetaries holding your chokes and a dozen ghosts waiting for the perfect defense. It still happens, but we've actually been seeing a lot more aggressive bio. Ryung is certainly going for the defensive setup, but it's already kind of getting cracked here. Ryung getting his 4th base, not killed, but cracked, so that the rest of the Zerg army could continue on roly-poly over a tank in over 25 SCVs. Ryung didn't have all of his army back at home, which is why Solar was able to find the damage that he did. And perhaps it would be a little bit more of a trade possible with these drops. They are not happening. Like Solar really did just get to do an attack, as well as defend seemingly flawlessly. I do not see Solar taking damage anywhere. Yeah. So if Ryung had 50 army supply on this side of the map that just killed 2 hatcheries and a dozen drones and a couple of queens and what have you, there'd be a little bit more to speak of. But those drops did not do anything. Ryung just took damage, and with a 70 supply difference, I think Solar might just be looking for the kill move soon. Just build them all up. Build the Banelings, get the Hydras, get the Vipers. Does he even need Lurkers? Not really. He does not. Actually, he's building fewer than Queens, so I guess that's what the drop did. Oh my god. Okay. Yes. The Queens might have been killed. But he's already back up to 4, which means he's got injects, and he's building another 4, which is going to replenish his Queen count well enough. Ryung's a bit desperate. He's got a drop going again, as he should, but he does not have the army back at home to hold, even against a Ling run-by. That was a run-by, guys. That wasn't Solar's army, so... Ryung just could not get settled on 4 bases and then established on the supply to really play out the turtle game that he might have wanted to play. So we don't really know what the potential was there for late game Ryung. What we do know is that Ryung is not looking any better versus Zerg in this series than previous ones that I've witnessed at the very least, which doesn't mean that he doesn't have a chance. I mean, we could see something very good in the second game, but I do believe that as far as the first 2 matches of GSL Group D, they're both the most mismatched possible. which means the winners and losers are going to be really, really well matched, but yeah, we're almost getting these out of the way. Truly the preliminaries, perhaps, but I personally hope that Ryung actually shows us some magic here. Game for 2, Royal Blood. It is Solar in the top right, up a game. In the bottom left, we have Ryung, who just doesn't have the world's best TDZ. So like I said, it's just a bit of a mismatch when it comes to these first matches. I still believe that as far as the 16 players in GSL, anyone can theoretically beat anyone. But if I were to give an example as some of the most mismatched round of 16 games, I think the last series and this series would be it. And I think that's backed up with actual facts. This is the last group, so if you think back to A, B, and C, have we really had such anticipated one-sided series? I don't think so. Some of them might have been one-sided, like Gumio Special ended in a pretty quick 2-0, but I don't think you looked at that matchup and was like, oh my god, Special is just in trouble, like he's gonna lose. No, I don't think so. So only at the tail end of GSL do we have some of the more mismatched. Astrea really did give a very good attempt at defeating the world's best TDP player, but that's literally the case for him. He was up against the world's best. And then for Ryung, Solar may not be the best TDZ or ZVT player, but we know that Solar is one of the players who can go toe-to-toe with Maru, which really does elevate his potential in ZVT, so you could make an argument. I think the award for best CVT might still go to some of the foreigners, but depending on your point of view, that might be a hot take. But he certainly is a top 4 Zerg in the world, I believe. But basically, we're talking about Cyril, Raynor, Dark, and Solar. Right? Occasionally, a Laser might get a pretty good result, or a Lambo might get a pretty good result, but... And, I mean, Ragnarok has made it to the GSL Finals, but it's just... Ragnarok's such a wild card, you know? Like, it's like, and he's been knocked out already in GSL, so this is certainly not his season. Anyway, Ryung's up against a tough opponent, no matter his particular skill, but then on top of everything, Ryung is also just, I think his TVZ is his worst. And sometimes when it comes to pros, when we talk about worsts, you know, it's still, like, freaking amazing. Like, Cyril's worst matchup is his DBZ, but it's still pretty freaking good. No, for Ryung, it actually seems like he can never quite get the fear instilled in the Zerg, you know? It's not that he does anything wrong, you know? He pretty much is playing, like, Beyond Wood in that last game. But there was a failed proxy, so that certainly did not help. And he doesn't play anything super poorly. We don't see tons of macro mistakes or micro mistakes, but everything is a little bit worse. Everything is a little bit less dramatic. There's a little bit less on the line, it feels like. And the Zerg players seem to always deal with things eventually. when it comes to facing Ryung. Scarlet not top 5 Zerg? No, I don't believe so. Personally, I do not believe so. I think she can be. In fact, I think if she reaches her full potential, she might even be top 2, but the problem is that she's far less consistent, and she very rarely reaches her 100% potential. I'd say recently I've only seen her reach maybe 70%. Top 5 in my heart. And that's totally fine. You know, like, of course we always cheer for the potential underdogs. Hold on, what's going on here? Hold on here. I like it. Ryung kind of doing, for the most part, a normal build last game. We never will know what his proxy barracks is really supposed to lead into, but assuming that was going to be a little bit of the 2 racks, 3 Reaper, perhaps 5 Reaper opener because it was proxied into the 2-1-1, that's a little normal. Again, Beyond has been doing some of that. Now, this 2 starport battlecruiser play, now that is different. I like it. This is something that Gumiho has done. A very, very expensive build. Actually, I believe when Gumiho does it, he only goes for 2 Hellions and a Reaper. He keeps the Reaper at home to ensure that he is not scouted, because one of the biggest tells would be the 2 gas geysers in the natural. So an Overlord over here would really ruin Ryung's plans. Fortunately, most Zerg players do not put their Overlord over here. It is usually here. And Solder in particular, I have noticed this, is actually very conservative with his Overlords. They're very rarely on the side of the map. The only thing Solar knows for now is that this could be an aggressive build. He sees no 3rd CC at the front, yet many supply depots very quickly. So if there was a 3rd CC on the high ground, you actually wouldn't need this many supply depots that quickly. You know, it could be a big brain fake, I suppose, but, you know, he knows that something is on the way. This could be a Hellbat attack, or it could be battlecruisers. Does he think battlecruisers immediately? Probably not. But he also might be a little, you know, if someone came over and was like, Solar, remember that run can be weird. And he's like, oh, that's right, okay. Like, he might be a little on guard. Hellions are actually trying to do damage, but so far they are unsuccessful. Liberator as well. I mean, I do kind of appreciate this way of opening into 2 battlecruisers, because there's a little bit more to consider for the Zerg player. If they're under pressure, if anyone is under pressure, even the pros, they are less inclined to go through the checklist of all possible things their opponent is following up with. So in that way, I do kind of like the pressure. I do believe that this means the 2 battlecruisers are hitting later than the Gumiho build that I'm referring to, but the surprise factor might still be good enough. Maybe. This is going to be 3 battlecruisers appearing. No, maybe 4? No. 3 battlecruisers with Yamato, I think. I'm actually not sure how long Yamato takes. I've never thought about it. It feels like a long upgrade. But is it? I don't know. Someone research that. It does look like Solar is on... Oh, wait, no, there it is. Okay, yeah, the 2 teleports actually did come in. I thought he was going to wait for Yamato, because he didn't immediately teleport to 2 battlecruisers, but at some point he decided to. Or maybe he was waiting for a second one. Fair enough. But this means that there are no 2 instant KOs on the Queens, which means the Queens will be able to defend, assuming they actually get across the map. We at least had 1 Spore Crawler, it looks like, just maybe the what-if Spore Crawlers. No, he actually was like, I don't know what's happening, 3 Spore Crawlers, which has also helped. But now that his Queens have done their initial defense of the 2 battlecruisers, the Spire will now be able to actually come into play, and as long as the Spire is actually available, it doesn't get sniped over and over again, this is the appropriate response to a battlecruiser play. What? Cute root grenade. And by appropriate response, I mean both in the fact that it is the thing you're supposed to do, and also meaning the thing that should safeguard Solar to play out a typical macro game. Again, if you get a macro game, I do favor Solar. So, 5 battlecruisers with Yamato might sound like a lot. But honestly, since Solar is at 77 drones and 4 bases, and his damage taken is not that extreme so far, I think he's fine. It'd be a much different story if these Queens were already pulled down to 2, and the battlecruisers got to free fire this entire time. The Queens not all instantly dying, at least they need to be considered. You know, they're going to get the Yamatos on them, and battlecruisers didn't get to just float over a bunch of drone lines. They had to dodge and weave, and now they have to teleport out, but they actually don't have teleports, and that is a big problem. Corruptor is going to guarantee 2 battlecruisers' deaths, and then even be able to counterattack, as Ryung has very little in the way of anti-air. He still doesn't have any cyclones. They are going to pop soon, but they don't have their upgrade. The battlecruisers still coming off of cooldown for their Yamato as well, I believe. The Corruptors do go for the instant counterattack. You know, it's probably not going to end the game, but oh my god, if it gets a 3rd CC. Oh no. Corruptor piss! Hellings get into the natural as well. Some Hellings were available, but I guess they all died. Oh, there they are. There they are. A little late, and also getting hit by the Banelings. Woodermines are going to pop off, but they're all going to pop off with the SCVs. No! So many of them now injured, and the battlecruisers were also getting torn down during this as the SCVs were busy trying to survive. They weren't being repaired. And that is that. Ryung sees the way this game is going to go from this point on and just taps out right now, which I do believe makes a lot of sense. Solder handles the macro game, handles the cheesy game. I'd say the cheese label is appropriate. That was very dependent on being a surprise, and it didn't work. So Solar moves on to the winner's match now to face Cure. We are now in the winner's match. Moving on to, I think, a very even TVZ. In the bottom right, we have Cure. In the top left, it is Solar. Well, I said very even. I do still favor Solar, actually. I think Solar has got quite a good group for him, his purposes. I think he is just a little bit better than Astrea generally. I do think, actually, Astrea versus Solar would be very interesting to watch. If we get to see it, I'd be excited. But generally, you'd Solar being so dependable, you would give Solar a little bit of the nod there. Ooh, a 15 hatch from Solar. But while Cure, I think TVZ is better than Ryung's, it still is probably his worst matchup as well. But it is far more in line with that idea that I was talking about like what is worst when it comes to pros. For ZVZ and Serral, it's not his best, but it's definitely not bad. Cure is the same thing. His best matchup is TVP. His TVT is almost at the level of Maru's. Very, very good. It's TVZ that is his worst. I don't know if the data actually supports that, but then you have to look into like who he plays and how often and whatever. But certainly the feeling that I get when I watch him says that. Because he isn't as confident looking, and maybe that's not an issue if he can play out like a really strong turtle game. We are literally on the map that I think Cure is worse at when it comes to turtling. I have seen him try to turtle on this map half a dozen times, and he has won once, I believe. Because he tries to turtle. You know, he does all the normal things initially, of course. He doesn't just go right into turtling. Well, sometimes he does. But it just usually isn't that good, and I believe some of those games that I'm remembering were also against Solar. So very specific to this matchup that we're seeing right now. But I can say confidently that we're already seeing a different Cure respawn TVZ than, let's say, 4 or 5 months ago. A 2 racks opener for the 3 Reaper opener that Byun loves, and Maru was also doing frequently for a time, and then pulled away from it, and then did it again, and then pulled away from it. It really is still up in the air as to whether or not this 2 racks opener will define the meta of the future for TVZ. It seems like it could, but maybe not. But Cure's going for it, and Cure... There was a time, like a year ago, where Cure really loved this 4 racks opener, so I'm glad to see him going back to it, because it has been a while. The 4 racks attack actually became quite popular. It was kind of the build of the month, or a couple of months on that. I don't quite remember. But there was a lot of it, and after so many times, Zerg's got accustomed to it and adjusted correctly, and we're fine against it for the most part. But there was always still that consideration of it was a 4 racks, was it a 3 racks, was it a 5 racks SCV pool. We did see that in the professional games occasionally. So that was still a little bit difficult. But now it's not really done very often. Again, the 2 racks opener with Reapers can lead into this. So if you were facing Byun, You'd roll your eyes at the 2-racks opener and then go, oh, well, I have to worry about what else is following this up. 3CC 211, 3CC 11, well, 211 I guess is bare minimum. Banshees, battlecruisers probably arrive at some point. 4 racks, 3 racks, like what the hell is it? And so Cure is going back to something that he really did play around with a lot off of the potentially modern TDZ opener that is the 3 Reaper. And Solar needs to figure out this is on the way. So far, he has no idea, and he really can't get a clue. That's not me being BM. He literally cannot get a clue. If he tried to send an Overlord across the map, it would be killed by the many Marines available from the 2 racks opener. Cure wouldn't have to show the rest of his Marines to kill an Overlord. And you don't want to get Overlord speed, because Overlord speed might be more hurtful than helpful if it is a fast attack. You get the 100 investment in there and all the drone mining in that gas that you wouldn't usually want for an ideal Zerg build order, and you get to scout the 4 racks, and you're like, yeah, I know about it, and then it hits you as you know about it. And you're like, well, that wasn't that helpful. So it's very complicated for the Zergs. They do seem to be figuring things out relatively well. I feel like sometimes just with my own bias as a bad Zerg player, I do sometimes overvalue how much the surprise factor hurts the Zerg. But I just gotta figure that this is actually very difficult for Zergs to figure out. Now, of course, he's figured it out by this point, sees a bunch of Marines, knows what's happening here. 2 options for Cure. He can stim and gun, try to win, or he can hover and force Solar to make very tough decisions when it comes to building army versus drones. Most of the time, we see at least 1 gun just go for it, and then they might retreat. Let's see if it happens here. You're going for a very reserved scan, clearing up some creep tumors, drawing the queens forward. He might have been able to pounce on that, actually. I would not have minded it. That actually was a missed opportunity. But of course, an understandable one. Kier just was willing to back away. Clearly, from the get-go, planning on a certain type of aggression with this build, because he actually hasn't scouted anything. He did not know that a Baneling Nest was even available, much less that Banelings were actually there. So I do believe he just planned to play this out in a more conservative fashion. So, creep, cleanup duty, and harassment. It's like harassment's usually used in the way that, you know, there's a bunch of drones dying, and queens dying, and hatcheries under fire. I mean harassment is literally just waving your hands in the air. Literally, Cure is your sibling in the car on an 8-hour road trip going, I'm not touching you. And it's very bothersome. Behind this, Cure is going into a 2-base setup. So we added on, just reactors. Still in 4 barracks. The most the 2-base setup can give you is 5 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport, and an engineering bay. But he's still on 4, so I think we're going to see that 3CC eventually. Probably that's what this guy's going to do. I see you. I see you. There you go. But it is nonetheless a lot of army very early on. Even though it's not a dedicated 2-base all-in, it's still dedicated to the 2-base setup first and foremost. And Solar knows about this with the amount of army. Well, actually, you know, that would just logically be as many Marines you would expect from 4 barracks. He doesn't actually know that there's tanks on the way. Tank? Singular? Sorry. But you would expect it, wouldn't you? They gotta be doing the factory something. So, Solar, I'm a little disturbed by his creep spread here. It looks like Cure's aggression, his hand waving, has actually worked out, as he is only able to, only has to use 1 scan to clear up the rest of the creep spread. That's a little worrying. You know, as a Zerg player, you hope to at least force him to use 2, 1 here and 1 there, but that tank is already very aggressive on Solar's 3rd base, and those Marines are looking to gun for it. They actually did a lot of damage. Transfuse had to come down. Solar's still in a bit of trouble as Centrifugal Hooks is not done, so the Banelings have a tough time actually reaching this army, which of course could also just pick up. Very close to death, though. Those queens were target firing for a reason, but actually coming down the ramp off of creep into the tank fire with slow Banelings is a no-go for the Zerg player. You can see that Solar thought that surround might be good enough, but without the Baneling speed, it still might not be. It's still not in effect. 8 seconds to go, and Cure is very well aware of Solar's intention. He is going to have to pick up, though. It looks like it. He's actually very late to picking up. Big mistake there from Cure. He thought he might have more wiggle room with a lack of creep spread, I suppose, but he absolutely was supposed to pick up 16 Marines, bare minimum. Well, and maximum, because he only had 2 medevacs, of course, but he was supposed to do it, and he did not. So about 9 less Marines involved in this secondary attack. Nonetheless, still providing that pressure. It's still kind of scary with another tank in position and creep spread still an issue, but now we got Baneling speed. They also had that +1 carapace finish at some point, so that's been helping. And Solar has managed to stay on at least 3 base economy. Not exactly 4. This one was chopped down. This one's only just finished. But it is at least settled 3 bases, so his mining has been consistent at the very least. Very tricky game for Solar nonetheless. Despite having Cure with a little bit of miss micro, Solar is the one I would say that still is feeling a lot of pressure. The supplies do favor him right now, but it's always that type of supply that's in question. A couple of bad fights against some really nice tank shots, and he could be in trouble. Also, Queens inflating the supply a little bit. We know if they go toe-to-toe with Marines, they will die. So you gotta be very careful about. The transfuses are available. Lings come running. Only 1 Queen went down. And now we have, once again, the Flood. We should have a pickup. There it is. And Cure. Did he do enough damage to really offset the Zerg player? I believe he did. Cure's 3rd CC is down. Reinforcements at home. Double upgrades now on the way. And he can continue being aggressive with his double drops. It's 1 single and 1 quad drop. That's kind of scary. Overlord does not realize it's there. Now it does. Where is the army? Already responding. Solar was already onto it. He knows. He's up to the Terran tricks. And just a couple of Banelings should be enough with those Lings to deter the drop. I mean, maybe Cure could have forced it, but is there really a reason to? Attack on the left. I mean, this is just Solar knowing how this game's going to go, right? This is just good old-fashioned TVZ. The only thing that would cause Solar not to be in such great position is if he was getting snowballed upon, right? Either literally, like he was draining army, he was losing out left, right, and center, or like mentally, if he was just flustered and dealing with too many things, and then maybe he wouldn't be in position. But this really is typical TVZ follow-up time, right? So Solar knows that the 2 attacks will be on the way, probably on the extremes of the map. A big surprise might be a 1 big direct push, but the Terran player might not actually get a lot from that surprise, because the fact is that Solar, once he figured out it was 1 big push, would still have an army that is able to surround. Still not a lot of creep spread. You know, if Cure got all 4 of his tanks over here sieged up, similar to his last push, it probably would still be scary. But Solar not having to worry about that. And finally getting some of the creep spread back over here. Let's move on to Hydras. 2-1 upgrades for him. Finally working on that +2 melee as well. No infestation pit. No hive. If Cure had actually gone into a faster second factory and was very consistent, there we go, about his tank production. Let's say he had 6 tanks already and was working on 7 and 8, so that main push could be very scary. A Zerg player playing late game Gresfawn, but not ultra late game. Like, late game as in the Terran has maxed out for the first time with tanks and is pushing you. And the Zerg player doesn't have Vipers, that is really scary for the Zerg player. Now that's if Cure actually does do the push. Cure does still seem like he's more inclined to play into that more turtle style of Terran, should the game go beyond 3 bases into 4. Where again, some other Terran players are experimenting far more with the heavy aggression. The Lings initially retreated, but realized that it was only tanks firing initially, so they take the opportunity to clear out. I believe that was 3 tanks on top of 2 from the earlier pushes. Solar lost a decent amount of Lings and Banelings for, but I would consider tank kills pretty worthwhile, as long as the Hydras live. The Hydras, without their Hydra speed, were in a little bit of danger. Overseer took one for the team, man. And now the Queens are also under fire. Cure seeing an opportunity to go for a very large counterattack, but it's not his actual attack without tanks. There they go. There they come. 4 tanks still alive. 6 in total, actually. If you could bring over the reinforcements, that would be ideal. And again, those lack of Vipers could be the biggest issue. The tank number isn't as impressive as it could have been. Those 3 tanks are very important kills for Solar, but nonetheless, the attack is here. I'm happy to see that. I was really worried that Cure would just play nothing but defensive, but after taking a little bit of a defensive engagement, feeling the confidence to move across the map, and now getting situated, this is a good position, a good potential for the Terran player. Solar is setting up 1 big counter, a big surround. I couldn't zoom out any farther. It's taking up the entire screen. Marines once again trapped in the middle of Banelings. Oh, right side get cleared out at the last possible second. I actually thought those banelings were going to connect, but a couple of tank shots or something helped those poor Marines survive for yet another day. However, not much bio was left over. Solar is without banelings, and this is one of those terrible timings for Zerg players. I think the Ling Hydra count might be enough. Yeah, he's going to lose the hatchery, but he doesn't get snowballed. His Cure manages to, I would say, to take a fight. Like, I would say that that was a fight taken. Perhaps it was a wash, but it could have been much worse, again, if those Marines had actually gotten surrounded by those banelings. 3-3 is on the way. In fact, +3 attack is almost done. That was much faster than the armor. Ghosts are also available, should he decide to make them. I would say there's not a reason to make a lot of ghosts right now, as Solar is not going into Ultras or Broodlords or Lurkers, but we know that ghosts are almost always good in a certain number. 6 is probably a good bare minimum, honestly, for any amount of TVZ. So I do expect them. Not yet, though. A couple more drops on the left, a couple more drops on the right. Once again, Solar anticipating this and having his army split up to deal with it. Very nicely done. Just a single Viper right now. Usually you'd prefer 2, but I guess 1 might do the trick. Yeah, there's the ghosts. There we go. And we got some good old-fashioned late-game TVZ. Cure with just a little bit more of the aggression, a little bit more of a fearsome opener, I think has really opened up the opportunity for a good TVZ for him. Some of the previous TVZs that I was mentioning earlier played out 4 months ago. Cure would be nothing but defensive, with only 1 drop on the field that would be doing absolutely nothing. And Solar would be in a very comfortable position. Not just reserve players, but for Solar himself. Solar actually under the gun, under all of this pressure, is clearly having some trouble. It's a very evenly matched TVZ so far. The drop kills 11 drones, the drop goes into the main base. Might be looking to target that Viper, given the opportunity. Not going to be given an opportunity, never mind. A good micro with the parasitic bomb medevac, and the rest will flee. Solar is 6 bases strong. Counting. The 7th seems to be a bit of a pipe dream. Doesn't seem to ever be actually up and running. And yep, there you go. Let's check the income graph to see how much of an advantage Solar has had. Typical Zerg advantage, I would say. It's a lot of red. It looks impressive, but that's kind of late game TVZ for you. And it looks like a couple of bad fights for Kira. Like that one definitely could have gone better. I think this was the one where he almost got surrounded completely. Oh yeah, late game TVZ being set up. At this point in time, I am actually totally fine with Cure going for the late game defensive setup, right? I mean, of course, Cure is 1,000 times better than me, so does my opinion really matter? Maybe not. But again, I feel like he's gone into this very turtle position too soon in a lot of his games as a Solar of the past. But I think now is the time to really focus up on not just turtling, but just taking the map at a slow and steady process. Talk a bit more about that later, because we got an engagement. Not one that I think is actually going all that well for Solar. He's not even going to grab this command center, which you'd think would be at the very least already grabbed. And it looks like Cure just expected something to deter his base, but nothing actually did, so he repairs both of his bases. Should repair both of his bases. And then also has this base already getting locked down. So what I was trying to say before the attack happened was that it's not so much that Cure goes back to playing really defensive. It's that Cure makes sure to do so while propelling, while pushing forward his expansions. So it's not his army that's necessarily being aggressive anymore, because he moves out on the map and he's always vulnerable to surrounds. It's his expansion process that is now doing the aggression kind of for him. You know, obviously Solar cannot let the Terran player take this space, and this space, and then which the Terran player doesn't have to move away from their defensive setup to aggress onto your hatcheries. This is the not quite split map scenario that the endgame Terran wants, because obviously this space is hardly ever taken. But yeah, it is a very important process of the late game. If Cure had been forced to turtle, or chosen to turtle, on his original 4 bases, while very conservatively trying to take this 5th, it might have been way worse. I do see some frame drops happening, so apologies for that. I'll start the recording now. So yeah, it's I think a very good process here for Cure. This is a very strong position for the Terran player. Solar needs to figure out how to crack the defensive posturing of the Terran, especially prior to them getting this base. I mean, this is usually where a lot of the back and forth starts to happen. And I love that Cure is moving over into more of that spooky mech. He's got 15 tanks, 5 medevacs, 12 Hellbats working on their blue flame, as well as the smart servos to transform them quickly, alongside Thors. Should he eventually find himself on Thors, he'll also have the quick transformation. And I do love a nuke! Everyone loves a nuke. Especially against Solar. Chances seem higher than usual to actually get it going. Attack on the left side, as that is usually the more vulnerable location. Terrans are very used to this, however. This might have been a novelty at the beginning of Gresfon's career on the map pool, but it's definitely not now. They know that this is the attack points, because it's an orbital. But that's why there's a little bit extra on the defense here. Still so many tanks as well. 15 tanks can cover a lot of room, you know. And also a very disappointing thing for the Zerg player in this type of situation is that the ghost count ensures a rebuke. There's no easy escape for a Zerg player whenever they decide to engage, so they really have to second and triple and quadruple guess any engagement they do. The Solar, not that much richer than his Terran opponent, is also a bad sign. He's going to try and engage here. Blinding Cloud at least one set of tanks, but still so many left over. The problem right now is the tanks are a little lonesome. Nothing actually protecting them from the overwhelming numbers of the Zerg. The Ghosts were forced to retreat, and the bio was not there. Of course, the bio's not really anywhere, as Kira moved over into more of a mech composition, so more accurately, the Hellbats weren't there. The Hellbats were not there to help tank the Lings and the Banelings to secure the tank's survival, so Solar did choose the right time to attack. I would say that was a decent attack, but still not the absolute best position for a Zerg player. Again, not that much of a bank to work with, and not exactly the perfect army for the Zerg. It is debatable as to what is the perfect army. A lot of the times, the Tier 3 units, such as Broodlords and Ultras, look absolutely useless in this scenario, because Ghosts are pretty good, and the option for Thors is there. And I think that's mostly true. There's something to be said about an actual mass Broodlord, Viper, Infestor army with Neural Parasite. That's a very good army, but clearly Solar isn't thinking about that right now. He's still going along with Ling, Hydra, Baneling, actually no Viper involved this time, just trying to overwhelm. And as the tanks were once again found a little bit lonely, it does work out. A lot more tanks cleared out. We also got a little bit of burrowed Baneling action. Not actually burrowing them, though. Okay, whatever. And also burrowed Infestors. No scan going down as of yet, but I expected one. There it is. ASVs went down, but the command center still lives. That thing has been hopping up and down. It's having a little party right there. But it still lives. The Banelings are still burrowed. The Infestor is still burrowed. Of course, looking for the Ghost to ensure their death. Also to take away all of the snipes. Solar did actually sneak in this base, which I feel like some Zerg players take their sweet time doing. Like, I've seen this base at 6 o'clock not taken from a Zerg player despite ample opportunity and a lot of late game TVZs. I'm really happy that Solar basically immediately got it. And it's just like, if you mine it out, more power to you. It is very easy for the Terran player to go and harass it. There you go. But like, if you can get it, you can get it. Another attack with Ling, Baneling, Hydra. It looks like the Infestors did not work out because missile turrets were around, so the Ghosts are able to free fire. And this time around, it looks like everything was a little bit more combined together. The Ghosts didn't have to retreat as far, and the Planetary was also up to defend those tanks. And a couple of snipes coming down too. That's not a lot of Zerg army left over, and I'm looking at the Zerg supply. I'm also looking at the Zerg bank. Solar never had that much of a bank, not a comfortable one for a Zerg player, as there's almost like 20,000 resource difference, and it looks like Cure has managed to weather the storm, play out this TVZ in a very good fashion. Early aggression, mid-game aggression as well, making sure to keep Solar on the back foot a little bit, really have to play around Cure's drops. And then into the expansion process, that puts the pressure even more so on the Zerg player. That was a really well done, very textbook TVZ from Cure, starting with that 4 racks opener, or starting really with the 2 racks opener in the Reapers. GG's, well done from Cure. I do feel like if his TVZ just improved and kept at this level, that he would literally be one of the best Terrans. The TVZ factor is the only thing I think keeping him slightly below that of course, Maru, but perhaps even, no, actually, you know, that's probably it, to be honest. Like, if his TVZ was also on the level of Maru's, him and Maru would literally be so toe-to-toe, right? Because they go toe-to-toe in TVT as well. So that's a good sign for Cure fans. And a good sign for his potential advancement in this series. Solar not getting maybe the easier Cure to face off against like he was 6 months ago. So GG. See what happens in game 2. Game 2 on Royal Blood now. Up a game after a fabulous display of TVZ. He is Cure. In the bottom left, we do have Solar. I wanted to check some actual facts as opposed to just going on my opinion. And it looks like I have missed a couple of victories from Cure in the last 6 months. So 6 months ago, actually Cure was, well, hold on, what is 6 months? Let's do some math here. 6 months ago would have been January, so what was I actually trying to think of? I was thinking pre-Katowice, maybe more 2022. That seems to be the case. Okay, so here's where my standing on this matchup for Cure was that I remember a lot of these games from apparently October. They just played so often in October, apparently. In which Cure was kind of getting bopped by Solar, actually. But he did manage to actually start winning a lot against him in the post-Katowice events. Then started losing a little bit again, and then has won against him consistently. Most recently winning the Kung Fu Cup as well as the Korean StarCraft League Open weekly tournaments. So, actually, Cure has done okay against Solar. I said that I feel like it was a couple of games that were versus Solar specifically on Gressfawn, in which the Cure's TVZ was underwhelming. You could probably go and find those on my YouTube. I could go find those because I'm the one talking about this narrative. And I could be like, yeah, okay, so I'm not crazy. But clearly, when you actually look at the amount of games that they do play against each other, all of these open cups, all of these even bigger tournaments, such as like 40TV tournaments, Cure actually does fine against Solar. So I was just very unlucky catching some very poor games from Cure when it came against Solar. I still think overall, Cure has had bouts of just unimaginative and unimaginative TVZ, where again, it's not doing anything wrong. It just doesn't really feel like it's his best matchup compared to his domination in TVP, his confidence displayed in both TVP and TVT, and his ability to wiggle out of tough scenarios in those matchups as well. TVZ never felt like it was up to that level. But clearly I was wrong about his experiences with Solar. There were a lot more than I actually had given credit to this series. They've played tons of times in this year. And Cure actually has a winning record. So Cure, factually, has come in as the overdog, as cats would say, and is displaying that, having won the first game. I would still contest that that was the best possible opportunity for Solar, considering some of the games that Cure has done on Gressfawn, again, I guess 7 or 8 months ago. I should reframe my, my time here. But apparently, overall, Solar's the one that has been having trouble against Cure. So certainly the last couple of times they've played, Cure has had his number, perhaps really getting the feel of the way that Solar likes to play, when he wants to push, when he wants to defend. And then I also think that Cure has been also developing some of the, more build orders, I guess, that the build order book has continued to increase in page count. As that 4 racks seem to be out of his build order book for a little while, and clearly came back in for that first game of the series. And he's doing something completely different once again, which I absolutely love. I mean, I do know that Terran players are very tricky in this matchup. All of them at this point. Well, except Clem. Take it back. A lot of Terran players are very tricky in this matchup, but not Clem. He's going to get to a 2 factory opener off of a 3cc, though, so this isn't coming out all that fast. Obviously, the second factory isn't proxied either, which has happened. And this actually isn't even just 2 factories. It is, in fact, all 3. So he is setting up into mech lickety splits off of 3cc, all hidden so far. Solar actually going for a scout this time around. Gets a ling into the natural and sees the supply depot counts of a 3cc, sees the actual 3cc, and will be denied vision of what else it is. He saw a third gas building, but I don't think it's all that unlikely for even a bio player. 3 factory, very quickly. Cyclone, Hellion, both upgrades for them as well coming down as quickly as possible. Battle mech is on the way. It does look like Solar picked up on something to tell him to get Roach Warren, because, you know, pure ling against all these Hellions coming out, it's going to be bad news. So that might have actually been the gas. Because I'm not completely certain as to what a bio build, whether it's like a 111 or a 211 or something, would actually get gas-wise. But if I had to guess, like, that's the reason that Solar is added the Roach Warren. He's like, something is up. Like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. And well, actually, it is either the gas or the fact that this is nothing. He got so far into the base and he saw literally nothing but a factory. That's weird. If this guy was actually going for a 2-base build, it would have been the second barracks right here. Or a 3cc bio build, sorry. Of course, now he really knows. Hellions and Cyclones on the front lines are already doing damage. One queen has fallen, Ling's getting barbecued, and the Roach Warren might not have come down fast enough, despite really the fastest scout I think he could have gotten. I mean, the Overlord definitely could have been faster, sure, but the chances of it actually getting a pure scout with a Marine guarding was quite low. So this is just tough. It is just frankly tough. Solar with an emergency defense is making it sort of happen. Now the Roaches pop out, of course, into more Cyclone lock-ons as the Mag Field Accelerator finishes as well. This is going to be very, very tough. Even a couple of Marines adding in some DPS. I see you guys. I acknowledge you. And the Hellions could always threaten a run-by the way, as there are no more Lings on the field, something that Solar perhaps has also picked up on. Also, you want the Lings out to try and get some sort of surround so that the Cyclones can stop doing exactly what they're doing. It's getting so annoying as Solar continues to bleed off units. He has no real answer for the battle mech that has come out so freaking quickly. Not a lot of Terran players are going to do this because there would be a significant lack of defense in case the Zerg player was going to attack you. Not getting into a starport for Banshees and having those 2 factories building at once going into Cyclones after a 3rd CC. That's a lot of time for early game attacks from the Zerg, but, you know, Solar not really known for being a very aggressive Zerg, even though he started off with a 15 hatch in one of those games. I didn't actually end up doing that. The battle mech just came out so quickly, despite also being an economic build as well. It was frankly greedy. It was greedy. And this particular greed actually follows up very quickly with a solid punch. And Solar, well, isn't getting 1 punch to death, but he is getting many punch to death. Many, many, many. Here with an excellent series setup, I would say. Again, controlling that first game very well, just like textbook TVZ control over the Zerg player. And then doing a bit of a cheeky cheek build on the second game that hit hard and fast, despite also being quite economical. Solar has simply been overwhelmed. No time to get enough Lings to surround these Cyclones and all these Hellions with fast Blue Flame. It would have been a problem anyways. No time to get to Ravagers, which have that extra range, as well as the Corrosive Biles to cause a little bit more room between you and the battle mech. It's just, you don't usually want to be on pure Roach against this composition, only if you have really, really, really supreme number advantage, right? Like, max out versus 140 supply. Then the Roaches might do the trick. And now, Roach Warren's even dead. Solar has been bleeding off to the point that I've kind of given up on him, if you could not tell. And I think I'm right. I think Solar is pretty dead. But he is trying to fight back. Just not working out, even getting a little bit of a back attack. The numbers are now favoring the battle mech player. 10 Cyclones, 9 Hellions against 13 Roaches. I believe at that point there might have been more like 20 or 24, but it just didn't matter. The damage output is so insane when those lock-ons come down. And Solar knows that this game is pretty much over. It is his last game in this particular series, so he give it the old college try. But he does have that second chance on the decider match, which he will now have to start thinking about. Gonna have to think about who he's most likely gonna face as well, because this game is over. And those Solar does not want to admit it. 16 queens with that, holy shit. Oh my god. Make that 17. Not too often the Cyclones overwhelm like this, you know? Usually enough Lings pop out to get a bit of a surround, or the Ravagers form, and then a count of like 8, I guess. And alongside some Roaches, some Lings, some Queens, and the Terran player has to back away, but at no point did Cure ever really have to back away. When he did, and Solar was like, I got you finally. It was after so much damage had already been done, so Cure just took the battle anyways. Took the game and took the series, of course, as well. So he moves on to the round of 8 of GSL in dominating fashion. Apparently this was one of the better opportunities for him. My bias on his previous TVZ aside, he certainly looked dominant versus Solar, and I have no complaints about the way that he played TVZ today. I might have months ago, but absolutely none today. So, GG's. And now Solar will await the winner of the losers match. Let's get into it. Here we are in the losers match. Whoever loses this will be out of GSL with no chance at advancing to the round of 8s. In the bottom right, we have Ryung. In the top left, it is Astrea. Astrea, I believe, once again coming in as a bit of an underdog, not nearly as much as his first series of the day. Because Cure has, again, I think, the best TVP in the world. Ryung, I think his best matchup might be his TVP. It's kind of hard to say exactly what his best matchup is. I mean, we could actually look at the facts. We could look at his last 6-month performance of his matchups, and a league lag would tell us, like, statistically what his best is. But again, you would have to delve into what quality of players are buffing up his stats, right? So, I mean, I'll look him up. But I do feel like Ryung has very good understanding of TVT, but the pace that is set by the modern TVT masters, such as Amaru and a Cure, is simply too good for someone who is an older pro who's like full-time apparently, but not, I guess, like, he also does other stuff, I guess is just the best way to put it. He's like a bit of like a content creator and caster and coach and all that. So I think his TVT is to be respected, and certainly if he gives advice on it, like, people should take that advice, but I don't know if it's his best. And then his TVP is very, very good, but then I'm not sure what it's like against the literal best Protoss in the world, but then who is the best Protoss in the world when it comes to TVP? Max Packs? Well, Ryung doesn't play Max Packs at all anyways. I mean, that's never going to happen. And then Classic? Well, Classic's out of the GSL, so I don't know what happened there either. The point is, I'm not really sure which one's his best, but I do think that his TVP is very, very good. I saw some of his qualifying matches for an event. Oh, it was Home Story Cup, actually. It wasn't qualifier matches. So this was a year ago, to be fair. But a year ago, he was playing some spectacular TVP at Home Story Cup in the round robin, I guess it was, because he played a ton of matches. And he would lose his TVZs and win all of his TVPs. And he would win his TVPs in really, really cool fashion as well. Like, you know, he'd be on the ropes and then he'd get this really sick surround with a bunch of Marauders and Medivacs. It'd be pretty cool. So I have a lot of, I guess, respect for TVP from Ryung, but more accurately, I have a lot of fun with his TVP. I just think it's just fun. It's just neat, you know? And Astrea, you could actually kind of say something similar for him, which is that perhaps his PVT is not his best. I don't know. Perhaps he is struggling with PVT like at other Protosses. Okay, sure. But you know what it is? It's just fun. It's just neat. Marge holding up the thing, you know? Like, it's just neat. Because they both play fun styles. Astrea with a little bit more of a different build, I believe. Ryung, I think, plays kind of straight up in this matchup. It's just his army movement's really cool. And then Astrea just has like a couple of wacky builds. He tends to get himself into more base trading scenarios than other Protosses, and yeah. I think it'll be a very fun series. I have no idea who I think will win. I really don't. Astrea's TVP, or PVT for him, remains a little bit more unorthodox. Case in point, a robo opener into Stargate. The sound effects are so low for me. I had to doubt myself. That's very odd. And he's very good at getting himself into tricky positions and then getting himself out of tricky positions. So I feel like we're kind of looking at Ryung's very solid TVP versus Astrea's kind of all over the place TVP, you know? Like, well, no one knows what you're gonna get. It's a box of chocolates. And I don't know how that's gonna work out in a best of 3. You know, a best of 5, usually we consider that to be like if the more consistent player plays a best of 5, they win. But a best of 3, that's really up in the air. So Astrea going for the Warp Prism opener, which he does seem to be really trying to build a reputation on Robo Warp Prism openers. He's like, the Warp Prism opener's been cast aside for too long. I'm gonna prove that this is a really cool opener. And it's like, oh, more power to you if it works. So once again, Warp Prism opener, 3 Adepts, one-shot the SCVs, very annoying for the Terran, who genuinely does not expect this. What? But it looks like even though that might not be expected, I'm gonna have to double check this actually, Cyclone and Viking were available. He might have scouted that it was a Stargate and a Robo, so he was mostly defending against the Stargate, but then the anti-Stargate units ended up being brilliant against the Warp Prism, which... Now that we saw that in action, I realized the redundancy of Astrea's build. Generally, if you do something a little surprising, a little unorthodox, a little odd, it's because you're hoping that the opponent kind of restricts themselves to one answer, you know? They're like, I know that's this thing, I'm going to go for this defense. But if you do 2 things that have the same defense from the player you're facing, is it really an effective opener? Perhaps not. But perhaps it really was just a circumstances thing going on here. You know, it's not always the case that Astrea loses his first Warp Prism like that right off the bat. And I could see the Warp Prism running around being obnoxious alongside the Phoenix. And a lot of aggression that Ryung just gets tired of dealing with. In this game, it could not be any easier for Ryung. He has no pressure on his side of the map. He has units that counter the Phoenix. Again, he was probably building up to in the first place. And his Tank, Marine, Cyclone, Viking push has demolished the attempt at third base from Astrea. It was a cancel, but I think that was pretty far along, so a very painful cancel. Yeah, and this is a decent position for tanks, you know? Decent. Even if this was entirely mined out, this is still a choke, favoring the tanks after all. Colossus does pop out, and that would at least stop the aggression from advancing further. Shield battery was up, Immortal as well, so yeah, Ryung wasn't going to push any farther. Maybe he could have stuck around a little bit longer, but didn't want to push it. Makes sense. Third Nexus planted on the left side instead of the right this time. Take what you can get, right? Speaking of, Phoenix finally get an opportunity to counterattack, to show their stuff on this side of the map. They grab a Cyclone and a tank at the cost of, I believe that was 1 Phoenix on the offense, 1 on the defense, I think. Almost 2 on the offense. And if it was only 1 for both of those units, I think that's okay. Astrea going into Phoenix Colossus, of course, as expected. Ryung moving over to a 3rd CC, only recently starting up his stim and combat shields. I love this. Jeremy Clarkson meme. Ryung's TVP is fun, but I like Astrea's PvT more. I think he could go either way on that meme, actually, depending on who you like more. But this is a kind of even game, actually, despite Astrea's Warp Prism opener being, I gotta call that a disaster. Does anyone disagree with that? Does anyone look at that opener and go, no, Astrea's okay, that was fine? I don't know about that. But it does actually kind of look like he's okay. Ryung might have deflected the Warp Prism harassment and also pseudo-dealt with the Phoenix harassment in the early game just by being the pusher. It does seem to come out at a very even place. Astrea is not that much farther ahead in workers, which is usually a bad sign for the Protoss, but again, on these kind of conservative Colossus builds, a lower probe count is not the end of the world. We've kind of had to move away from our idea of PvT when it was the mass gateway style, in which case you would need that 8 worker advantage at least as the Protoss player. With these Colossus styles, it's not as important, especially if you're not going to get that much gas. So we have only 4 gases still for Astrea, even as he moves on to not just Colossus, but also 1-1 upgrades. I guess he will not be moving over into Disruptors or Archons or a lot of stalkers even, particularly quickly. Only on one robo, that makes sense. So we will be one disruptor at a time, but yeah, definitely not the highest gas Protoss we see as the game moves on. Astrea is certainly capable of defending this upcoming attack. His gateways are finishing, his charge is finishing, his upgrades might not. But as he does prepare for the attack, he might be able to buy some time. Phoenix are sharpening around, looking for anything they can grab. Even a couple of Vikings would be crucial. The more Vikings dead, the more his Colossus are safe, although the tanks still are a problem. And there you go, he actually takes the engagement, forces another siege up, crucial seconds, allowing his upgrades to further finish his disruptors to get into place or be misrallied. That's a misrally. I gave it too much credit. That was just straight up misrally. A couple of units on the front lines also not being paid attention to get destroyed immediately. Phoenix are not finding the success they would like on the backstab. Many of them just dying and not finding anything in return. Ryung holds on to a 20 army supply lead. But Astrea still with a good enough army, I think, to defend. Not to attack, but to defend, yes. Shield battery, positions, so on and so forth. His fourth base is under attack, though, and the disruptor on the right was on purpose this time. 2 tanks, 2 kill a disruptor. Zealot's gonna jump on top of the tanks, which is very ideal, but the bio was not taken care of fast enough, so the Nexus will fall. However, the actual engagement is not looking so poor for Astrea. As Zealots did their job killing the tanks, but could not do much more beyond that. Still repelled by the bio forces, both parties at equal upgrades. Astrea, had he been able to save that Nexus in the process of the engagement, I think would be playing a fine PvT, but losing the Nexus, that is tough. I don't think Ryung is actually capable of moving into this army, though. Very much an overextension from Ryung, who was also injured from the earlier battle. I was saying that was a bit of a faulty attack because the 3 Colossus were fine and dandy, all types of healthy. That was not enough fire to kill it. Again, a misrally. Astrea. I'm actually going to assume that this was also a misrally. He just tried to make it a attack. Please, for the love of God, fix the rally. Oh my God, he still hasn't fixed it. Yo, that's 3 disruptors killed to a misrally. That, I mean, imagine if he did it. Imagine if those were part of the fights. Astrea would also be doing much better. If he had 3 disruptors part of the fight and his 4th Nexus didn't die, both things I think that are possible, I think he's really, really in a good place. But one very much just big mistake, no doubt about it. And one, well, it was difficult to exactly take the fight like he wanted. Has resulted in, again, I think a relatively even game. Even on the supply, certainly. Even on the upgrades, no. No. Ryung actually very late to his 2-2. Which is not uncommon in TVP, so not really his fault. But Astrea pumping in those Chrono Boosts to his 2-2 is going to finish it long before Ryung gets close to finishing his. Astrea also now having some breathing room, not expecting a follow-up attack particularly quickly because Ryung did overstay. So that only cost him a couple of units, but it also, I think, cost the fear, you know? Like, if the army of the Terran completely disengages after a bit of a wash, then you don't know if it's disengaging back home to purely defend, or if it's picked up a medevacs and trying to attack you, or if it's capable of maxing out faster than you and about to re-engage at any point. No, that actually gave Astrea a lot of breathing room, and I think he noticed it, so not only did he get his 4th base up and running, but also his 5th at the same time. So he really knew that he had time to play around with, and with his Nexus reestablished, he is also now rich enough to go into more than 1 robo. He's now going into triple, which is very, very appropriate. Charges on the left, taking care of some of these defensive tanks, although perhaps too many Zealots. Definitely need to retreat some of those. Zealots also in the natural SCV line, killing plenty of SCVs. Worthwhile run by indeed. Doesn't open the opportunity to hit the right side, which Astrea was trying to pry open, but not so much. Not yet anyways. Perhaps with a couple of more disruptors, as well as the potential of DTs and Blink, I could expect a Dark Shrine any moment right now. And then perhaps a little bit more of that 1-2 punch. Left and right, perhaps even center as well. Triple disruptors, that's what we like to see. And this is definitely the type of PvT that Astrea would do well in if he got aggressive with Blink Stalker Disruptor. Again, in a series versus Cure, it's not necessarily the wrong idea that he was going for, it just was kind of the wrong circumstances. So his army wasn't really sufficient, and his knowledge of his opponent's army placement was also insufficient. This is much more like a Protoss would want to then go into that Stalker Disruptor aggression and really force the Terran player to play very defensive, perhaps even move over into those Liberators, which Ryung should be thinking about. Start the upgrades at the Fusion Core, and eventually start up some additional starports as well. There you go. God, I love it when it's so well timed. It makes you look so freaking smart. Ah! Anyways, 6 base on the way for Astrea as well, as again, he just boosts us 3-3. Actually, Ryung managed to catch up a little bit, but yeah, Astrea's definitely gonna have 3-3 faster than his opponent. Dark Shron on the way too, so Dark Templar Blink. Astrea was very good about getting DC Blink immediately, versus Kira just didn't end up doing anything. A couple of Disruptor snipes actually, as Astrea led the fight with Disruptors. Ryung more than happy to tackle only the Disruptors and then skedaddle. This would be... this is a very good situation for Astrea, I would say, but thinking on it, this would be the type of game where I expect Ryung to do the thing that makes me think he's really cool, which is to get that one of those perfect surrounds, because he has had games where he has fallen behind versus the Protoss and then managed to bring it back with just really excellent army movement. So we're having a little bit of that displayed right now. Bit of a tackle on the left side. It was okay engagements from Ryung. But then the right side was really where I think Astrea started to bleed out. I'm not sure if he had units over there, to be honest. I expect that he did. But the Nexus remains standing, so that's at least the good news. Ha! His recall lost the photo. And yeah, Astrea did dip down in supply. 5 SCVs to a couple of Zealots again. This is a planetary. This is a planetary, but this, as an orbital, is still a bit wide open. Very annoying. And Ryung, of course, if he does plan on expanding to the left at any time, would then open up another opportunity for run-bys. He is trying to get on the map once again. His 3-3 is almost done, but not yet. So for the next 30 seconds, there will still be an upgrade disadvantage. Astrea also with a hefty number of balls. 8 of them. I did not think that was 8. I was going to guess 5. Okay, I wasn't wrong. So they're still reinforcing. Okay, but 8 Disruptors. About to be 11 is particularly good. And as he continues to aggress and control the map, he'll actually be able to control the battles as well. Obviously, just killing a command center for free is really nice, too. Upgrades finally done for everyone. Everyone gets upgrades. Ryung moving on to Liberator range, as well as that +2, about halfway done, is prepared to make the Liberator transition, and I believe he eventually will have to, but he is trying his darndest to continue being aggressive on the map, not simply deciding, okay, Liberators equal Turtle. I don't know what's happening over here. I guess, oh, Liberator harassment. There you go. And the probes get pulled away from the bio into the Liberator, so they're just not having a very good day, are they? Stalkers do respond immediately. 7 probes go down, not the biggest of deals. Astrea moves on to his 7th Nexus. That's a very aggressive Nexus. Yeah, I don't know about that one. DTs and, wait, hold on. Liberators don't have any response. Hold on here. What? This is awkward. This is awkward as hell. The Colossus standing in the middle of the zones are like, please, for the love of God, do not kill me. But more Liberators come forward. Back attack from the bio as well. The Stalkers came to help out the Colossus, but now inadvertently face the units they don't want to face. They wanted to face the Liberators. That's their goal. And now they're facing the bio. As Astrea was just caught all over the place in that engagement. Now from emergency Zealot warping in. Not actually the best thing to do in the late game. The Zealots are not the means to an end. They're stopgap, whatever you want to call it. They are actually very easily dealt with, is the point. When the army of the bio player is still that big, with EMPs, with upgrades, and with medevacs. Zealot reinforcements do not do that much against that. That is an emergency response from a Protoss. 13 Disruptors are still in play, but I have no idea where they are. And oh my goodness, what is this? Astrea is all over the place in the worst way possible. This is not good Protoss play, to be honest. Like, the Disruptors, what is happening over here? Not only were the Disruptors mishandled, which, okay, a lot of things were happening. Let's go ahead and excuse the mishandling for a hot second. Why was an only Disruptor army, frankly, on its lonesome, trying to attack? This is something that Astrea kind of did versus Kira, and it just had equally bad results. Still plenty of Disruptors, 8 of them, to respond to this attack, but now the Liberators on the offensive with that +2 and range are a real danger to the Stalkers. Still enough Stalkers to beat this back by the looks of things, and Zealots coming in too to support, and it means that Ryung has to disengage, but 2 Nexus have fallen. A third might have just been killed, actually. because these two fell. This one fell earlier on. Yeah, I think that was actually killed, not canceled. This one's also a goner. I mean, what the hell? How does he even get up here? What is... You know, he was getting it a long time ago and just didn't get the APM and get the attention to cancel it, so that's going to be 5 Nexus killed in this game, which in an 18-minute game might actually be that bad. One every, 3 minutes in the last 10 minutes or something like that. That wouldn't be that bad, but 4 Nexus in the span of a minute and a half, that is pretty bad news. Ryung really now just has to defend to win this game. Astrea pretty much all in with this attack. Can he actually break through the Liberators? Ryung always has Liberators on his side, even if they aren't here to defend this particular location. This one actually just completely facing the wrong direction as the Stalkers blink in aggressively. The Planetary, now the one thing holding strong in this particular position. But Ryung could be trying to reinforce the Liberators. He's not, though. He's not building any Liberators. He's trying to get his army over here, which might still be good enough, especially with a little bit of a concave. Tanks still firing as well. Charge lots coming in to reinforce, but from downtown, that might just be too late to actually help out here. And that Planetary was a huge distraction. That being up and running distracted the Zealots, distracted the Immortals, forced the Disruptors to move in locations they did not want to, and Ryung will, in fact, take game number 1. But damn, that was a way scrappier than I was expecting. Scrappier being one of the more positive words I can use. That just kind of went to shit for Astrea, honestly. And even Ryung started to kind of show, I think, a major mistake towards the end of that game. Like, Astrea straight up starting to make some very bad maneuvers, frankly. Very bad maneuvers. Obviously getting more and more desperate. And then Ryung, almost shocked by his desperation, also started to make some kind of clumsy maneuvers. But overall had the stronger last 3 or 4 minutes of the game. Astrea really lost the ball there, despite being set up so perfectly. It actually looked like he was teed up to really play the type of game that he's very good at. Blinkstalker Disruptor, but then just suddenly all went to shit. But I think we can say that that was a very closely matched game, 20 minutes almost. So I'm excited for the rest of the series. Game 2 is going to be on Gresfon. The top left we have Ryung, in the bottom right it is Astrea. We are finally getting a very close match. I thought Cure versus Solar would be a lot closer. Game 1 was, decent for sure, but even then it became evident that Cure was overall winning the TVZ, provided he made no major mistakes, which he did not. And the second game was very easy for him. So this 4th match of the day for Group D is the only one that seems to be really, really well matched. And that was a roller coaster, that was scrappy, that was forced errors all around. But there were also a lot of unforced errors. I guess you could blame some of the unforced errors on things like stress, intimidation factor, a very prestigious event. They are once again offline. So you're not at the comfort of home, which some people do better and some people do worse. Yeah, so on and so forth. So, but yeah, the Disruptor Rally, that's the biggest unforced error. But then some of the engagements later on, Astrea just clearly trying to gain control back on the game in a way that sometimes works, but I think just really the type of army that he was trying to maneuver with was not well suited for movement. It wasn't suited for counterattacks. That is actually where 20 Zealots are really helpful. The 10, 12 emergency Zealots he made at that 6th, I believe. That was desperation. That was body blockers. Just please take so much time killing these Zealots that I can go respond to this. But the attack on Ryung's Planetary with the 5 Disruptor Ball that just ran into the Planetary, that is the type of attack in which 20 Zealots are very useful. 20 Zealots probably break a Planetary, especially if things are getting so hot and heated that Ryung can't respond with the repair. And then they also, if not that, they just kind of just run around all the bases and do a lot of damage. Basically, the charge lots are tanky enough that you can cause interruptions. And they're also A-movie enough. Frankly, that is one big factor. That's a positive and a negative sometimes, but yeah, for that type of attack, you just want 20 Zealots. You just want Ryung to be feeling as much pressure as you are against his bio. But when it's Disruptor and only a handful of Stalkers, that's actually kind of easy for a Terran player to deal with. Either the Planetary deals with it, or a decent number of bio units coming in as a Concave deals with it. So I don't know. It's just I'm sure, of course, Astrea knows all these things. You know, I'm not trying to say that he is just like, you know, let me teach you a thing or two about late game TVZ, Astrea, TVP rather. Like, no. But it does feel like some of these games are almost getting out of control. Like, he does control them as much as you would expect Astrea to, considering his career. And then all of a sudden, they just get really out of control. And he often thrives in those scenarios, but for some reason today, he is not. He is making some, I guess I'm saying he is making unorthodox mistakes. Astrea is usually very good in these very scrappy, comeback, all over the map type of scenarios. And is absolutely no stranger to building a bajillion zealots. We know that. And anyways, game number 2 getting started very quickly here as Ryung goes for a 2-base proxy starport, but a Hellion drop is underway. Adept was so close to finding that. Oh, unlucky. Of course, he knows about the factory and the reactor, so should be suspicious of a Hellion drop. His Stalkers are not in position. He is going into a typical Blink build, no weird Robo Phoenix play like last game. But oh boy. The probes actually split pretty decently. However, that's still going to be a lot of damage. Roasty toasty. 9 probes go down, 2 Hellions survive. 2 base drop as well, by the way. Good enough. I would say that's good enough. So Astrea had more probes to give in a fashion, I suppose, you know, because it was 2 base. That's not even accurate. He basically has... You lose 9 probes at 3 minutes, different than 9 probes at 4.5, is what I'm trying to explain. But 9 probes killed, and the medevac still threatening you is not great for the Protoss. It's not the end of the world. I think Astrea could definitely make some moves to come back here. He's only got 2 gateways, but he does have a Warp Prism, because God, he loves Warp Prisms today. And he does eventually have Blink finishing. There we go. So the 4 Stalkers don't really need Blink to harass the SCVs, but they got it if they need it. So 1 shot eventually. There we go. Unfortunately, a lot of these shots are very awkward. Yeah, finally. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So already returning the damage. 6, 7 SCVs go down. 8 and a 9. Yes, we got 9. Instant return on the damage. There you go. And a little bit of delay on that 3rd CC. Also, of course, a Scouts. Astrea now knows his opponent going into a 3rd CC is going to have a slightly delayed follow-up attack, giving him room to breathe after his loss of probes. And Astrea is back up at it, man. He's back up 11 probes. That is far comfier for the Protoss player, even though the Terran is quickly on a 3 CC. And the 3rd Nexus is also done. Moving over into Robotics Bay and Double Forge. So it is a lot to afford, but I think he can do it. A lot to forged. 1 Stalker went down, so no longer one-shotting the SCVs or Marines. But Warp Prism pressure is already very effective, and it's always better than nothing. Roast Probe absolutely tastes like metal. It's probably absolutely terrible tasting. 1-1 starts up alongside Charge, and I imagine that Astrea will just simply have to remain on 1 Robo for a longer period of time, once again, similar to the last game, to afford everything that he's doing. Ryung is rebuilding his worker counts, and being down by about 11 workers is not the worst for a Terran player either. My bigger problem is the significant delay on a follow-up attack. I mean, not only is Systemic Combat Shield still not done, his +1 is also a bit later than a lot of other builds would have. His actual army count is not that impressive. His production only recently finalized, I guess. Sim and combat, shouldn't he have more units? Am I freaking out here? He's had the 2 tech labs researching clearly for a long period of time. What the hell did he build from those? Did he lose them? No. Barely any army units have died. Where the hell? He just simply wasn't producing. He was instead investing into his 3rd CC, his factory production, and then getting his SCVs harassed, I guess. Oh! What are you guys doing over here? There's a little bit more army. This looks a little bit better. That's funny. That's weird. Observer gets scanned. Very important. That's just too much free information for Astrea, who is also getting information with hallucination. Really wants to know what his opponent's up to. That might be... That's actually kind of an interesting hallucination timing. He knew there was a 3rd CC, and he knew that 4th and 5th barracks weren't done yet. Perhaps checking the factory production, or seeing if like a Ghost Academy's already on the way, or a 2nd starport as well. Okay. Missile start coming up as Ryung prepares to defend further Warp Prism attacks. Very important for him, but he really has been just trying to build up. And it feels like, to me, it feels like Astrea has been able to build up a little bit stronger, faster, taking advantage of the lack of follow-up aggression after the Hellion drop. Something that he wouldn't be able to do that quickly because of the worker damage, but he made sure to return the damage, so they both got slowed down. But again, I think the Terran's lack of follow-up aggression means that Astrea had a little bit more of a risk to take. So for instance, getting a double forge instead of a single. Forgoing the 2 robo production in exchange for these things. And even going into Warp Prism speed rather quickly, I would say. It's usually more of like a 4 base saturation. I've already gotten like almost maxed out type of upgrade usually. But he is almost up to 4 bases, once again, holding off on the gases, because he only has one robo. He's actually even moving out here, as Hallucination is now just, frankly, the only thing scouting, because the Observer is dead, right? So he just wants to see where the army is and what the setup looks like at the Terran's 3rd. He doesn't know about all of these Widow Mines, but he knows there's at least some. And frankly, with the Widow Mine field, bio, ghosts, and tank setup, I don't think Astrea can really find a lot of wiggle room. Nah. But it does further confirm that Astrea has the map control, and assuming that he doesn't take one very atrocious fight, he can always buy time. Back away, back away, back away. So his 4 bases should be up now with all 6 gases. 8? Nope, but at least 6. Double Forge still cranking out the upgrades, and now we have 2 additional robos. I was waiting for that 3rd one for some serious production. 5th base as well, and again a Dark Shrine probably very soon. For Ryung, this does feel like a game that would be best suited for going right into Liberators, honestly. It feels like there is just absolutely no room for him to pressure. And Warp Prism, unfortunately, is doing damage. I mean, this Ryung is literally only on 3 bases. Very much ideally, this means you do not take any damage from Warp Prism attacks. You're not that spread out. Your army's not on the field. It's at home waiting. So 13 SCVs, a handful of army, almost a tank. There's only so much you can do, I suppose, against a quick Warp Prism. It is what it is. And Astrea still only working on those Disruptors. No Dark Shrine as of yet. If he could delay this 4th command center, that'd be excellent. It's really the only thing he could do right now with this particular army, I would say. If Ryung is going to actually turtle, Astrea might want to consider going into Stargates. Not something a Protoss often does, I would say, just because it really slows you down as well, and there's a lot more potential for just taking consistent engagements and trying to find Terran out of position, exactly what Astrea is trying to do. But it might be worth it if Ryung really is just playing a very passive game. And so far, no transition over into the starports and fusion core, but I feel like it's going to happen at any second, basically once he has enough gas. That's currently his biggest problem. 4th base quite late, indeed. And this is not a solid setup. Stalkers do blink in, take out the tanks, take out the Liberator, and a couple of SCVs will go down. The consequence of the Disruptors, though, is they put themselves on the front line. Also, the Stalkers blinking back means the Vikings can bully back these Colossus. So a little bit of a gain, a little bit of a chase. Still, ultimately, Ryung down in supply. And having a tough time. His macro is also very much slipping right now as he handles multiple attacks at once. 3rd base, 4th base, and natural. All under attack. And the threats of the army on top of your 4th base at any second, Ryung has got to know that he's almost certainly screwed. His army's just simply not big enough right now. He's got to have some more tank sieging or Liberator sieging to really hope to handle such multi-pronged pressure. Disruptors being thrown out get 2 pretty freaking nice shots, and the planetary does go down. Not enough SCVs to permanently repair that one. Colossus do fall, but the Colossus falling is not that big of a deal for Astrea at this point, who can replace his army with gateways lickety-split, and can replace his robo-counts with bigger and badder disruptors very quickly as well. Planetary falling is a tough time for Ryung. He needs these minerals, he needs this gas as he finally starts up all of the production and another 4th CC. He's spent his bank, but you know, clearly he is falling behind. He's already fallen behind in this game. He's falling even further behind. So Astrea takes another base at the top, finishes off his upgrades with 3-3, and now he's working on the shields. So Ryung's actually only on a single engineering bay. He's only getting up to 2-2 as I am speaking. Ew. Not a particularly fun game for Ryung, I would say. You know, the fun factor of this game is a solid 3 out of 10. Since the Hellion drop and the immediate counterattack, it did seem like Ryung was forced into an unideal Terran play. And only a very scared, I think, Protoss would have mishandled the follow-up. A Protoss who could not recognize the lack of potential from the Terran, you know, and it didn't go into a little bit of greed and didn't actually get themselves on the map, and basically a worse Protoss. But Astrea playing out this particular game, I think, very well. Just got 3 goes with the Zealot run by. That's excellent. And while the Disruptors do once again put themselves in the front line, there's just so many of them. It's a bit of a clown fiesta final battle, but one that ends in favor of Astrea. There you go, GG, all right. Not the most exciting game for 2, as Astrea was in the lead, I think, from minute, let's say, 8. Throw out a number there. But one that makes the series exciting because it does mean it's tied up, and we do get a game 3. And now game 3 of this elimination match. In the bottom left, it is Astrea. In the top right, it is Ryung. By the way, I did take a look at their recent history. There's not that much of it, but Astrea does usually win against Ryung 2-1 as well. So Astrea is once again looking to do that here in the GSL to give him a chance against Solar, which would be a fresh matchup, and one that I think would actually be quite interesting. I'm not going to say that Astrea has a great chance against Solar for the decider match, but I certainly think it would be better than him facing Cure. That much I definitely will say. For Ryung, I think he, I don't think the decider curse will actually affect the final match. It'd be really cool if it did. It further confirm my belief in the decider curse, but I think Ryung might just be playing to the decider match for internet points. I don't think. Does the prize change if you come out 3rd versus 4th in a GSL group? I don't actually know. Frankly, if it was only the base prize pool of GSL, I would kind of say it doesn't really matter. Unfortunately, the base prize pool of GSL for the year of 2023 is comically small. But when I say comically, I mean like, you know, you laugh instead of cry because those are the only 2 options, you know? It's very sad. But the Patreon, patreon.com/GSL, where you get these replays from, has really helped out that prize pool. So if the difference is there, then I imagine it's somewhat serious between the 2. But yeah, I am basically saying that this is a very exciting match right here, right now. So evenly matched game 3, let's go. Into almost certainly a death for either one of these players in the finals, the decider match. Oh, almost certainly. Dying game. Well, it certainly does not help that Blizzard entirely pulled out, but Microsoft is quite seriously a very likely savior. But also, the interest in the foreigner scene, the non-Korean scene, has actually not wavered all that much. It is just the Korean scene, which has struggled with StarCraft 2 since its release, that has been hit the hardest. This was never Korea's game. Lol, buyouts equal good for a company? I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but there's actually no I frankly believe that there is no arguing that Microsoft owning Blizzard is better for StarCraft than anything else. I actually think you cannot argue that. People have tried, of course. I've read the Reddit comments. But I just... no. Literally, just by the mere thoughts of buying out Activision Blizzard, as Microsoft mentioned StarCraft. At the mere thought of even having it, they mentioned it. Blizzard literally has it and has not mentioned it in any of its reports or like BlizzCon trailers or anything in like fucking 2 years. Like it's a breadcrumb, all right? It's like one tiny little thing, but I'll take it. Anyways, we do have a typical TVP so far, although a tank first coming out is a little weird. Okay, the Hellion first, my bad. But you know what I mean. It's not a Woodmine drop. Astrea goes into a 2-gate third base, which, in the previous GSL group, I actually said, I guess this is a thing of the past. Because it feels like it really has... It went from being like 80% of games a couple of years ago to being 10% of games. A lot of Protoss players are preferring going for a good old-fashioned 4 gates. We saw Creator go for a bunch of 3 gates. Which is kind of a creator thing, I guess. But then we also see a lot of Protoss players actually playing into the 2-base Stargates and Colossus and sometimes High Templar. Like, it's actually not a lot of 2-gate expands. But I love that Astrea is still trying to do it because it's my favorite way of playing. Blizzard doesn't exist anymore? I mean, it definitely does. But we'll save this conversation for later. As this end up being an attack, I was waiting for that medevac, and it actually picked up a couple of SCVs, which is quite clever. Astrea also having no idea this is on the way, was not prepared for the supply block that it has caused. The Nexus also 90% done, does not want to be cancelled, but frankly it has to. Sentry first is an interesting option to start this battle. Not sure that was intentional, but it might not matter. Tank being able to fire away with no repercussion is really a bummer here. The SCV's not even having to repair, they're just helping kill the freaking Nexus. Blink forward to take out the tank, then the Stalkers themselves get slaughtered, and this is a strong start for our Terran player. Astrea just not having any idea this was on the way. If he did, it was later. It was too late to actually respond. And then also has the limiting factor of those 2 gateways. So, 2 gateways were... and I think still are viable, but you obviously have to scout. You have to know if you have to consistently warp in, get extra pylons, get extra shield batteries, all the things that Astrea did not do. But that is certainly a weakness of the 2 gateways, is that if you do get an oh shit moment, you do not have that emergency production. 3 gateways can give you just a little bit more. And that little bit, those 2 extra stalkers by the time the push comes can be a big difference. Although... I will say that in the last group again, there was a particularly feisty tank push from Gumiho that still killed the 3-gate Protoss, but circumstances, right? It's all context-based. Astrea is in trouble. Ryung is only down 5 workers, as Astrea's Nexus is only now 70-80% done. I would say this is exactly the type of game that Astrea thrives in, though, and I will use the word thrive. Like, it's obviously not ideal, but this is like his game. This is the type of game where he's like, all right, time to go Super Saiyan, time to do some really weird shit and actually bring this back. He does that a lot. I'm saying that situations are situational, exactly. Thank you. Someone understands me. In my big brain. My ability to form phrases is just unmatched. Attempt at a Stalker counterattack was really supposed to be an attempt at a Stalker control. This was supposed to find an upcoming attack, and it did not. So while this is still without stim or combat shields, and Astrea would have been able to pick away at the Marines and SCVs and medevac and all that good stuff had all 9 Stalkers been tracking this, and once again did not realize it was attacked. Did not realize Ryung was so willing to re-engage so quickly, and well, 1 Nexus kill might put Astrea into his weird comfort zone. 2 Nexus kills is straight up bad for everyone. That's just, again, flip of last game. Now it's Astrea straight up not having a good time. Not at all. Love his attempt, though. Stalker's back on the front lines. Gotta do what you gotta do. Gotta play out the game on your last life in GSL. But Ryung's tricky little tank push is really ruined Astrea's chances. Because the first push was tricky. The second push, I would argue, was also kind of tricky. No one expects the stimless follow-up Terran push. Astrea going for a gamble, going for a double Nexus, and probably hoping this one is simply never scouted for. Maybe even could have gone for the gold, but that's almost on the nose at this point. I will say the actual numbers don't look so bleak. I feel like the situation feels very bleak, but the numbers are not uncommon in PvT. 30, almost 40 supply difference. It's not good, but I have seen this before, and I have seen Protoss manage to hold on, and properly positioned units and shield batteries really being crucial to that. And I noticed no shield battery for third base. Not only that, I think he would have to take away some of these siege units. No siege units and the bio trying to butt heads with Colossus and a shield battery is pretty damn difficult for the Terran player. The slow siege hop seems to be the death push. Astrea has no answer to the tanks. Charge out number is not in high enough numbers. 1-1's not even done. Fourth base was canceled. And, yeah, Astrea's pretty dead. He was pretty much dead when the first third was killed. Definitely dead when the second third was killed, and I don't know what he is at this point. He is disintegrated into dust. He is really, really dead. But it is his last life in GSL. 3 Colossus and a dream, and a Disruptor dream, that's what it is. Disruptor dreams. Hada. Ryung really making this as easy as possible, too, by the way, with the tank inclusion. I think in this type of scenario where you're just so far ahead, tanks are just almost impossible for the Protoss to deal with. I mean, if you leave them completely alone, they'll take care of them, but obviously Ryung played that out well enough to actually get the series victory. And so Ryung will move on to the decider match to face Solar once again. In the bottom right, we do have Ryung, and once again, in the top left, we do have Solar. This time a different map, however, so that gives me a little more hope for Ryung. It is Babylon, which has a couple of nasty tank spots as well. I mean, Gresfon did, but as I was saying, the first time these guys played, even if Ryung had a very good idea or a solid start, I just believe far more in Solar's ability in this matchup. So it'd be like, you try to get a little bit high, be sort of excited about Ryung's potential, but then it just kind of fall flat. And I don't like saying that, just to be clear. I think Ryung is an awesome guy and a really fun player, but it just seems his TVZ is lacking a little bit of that clutch that is necessary to beat the best Zerg players in the world, of which Solar does contend for one. So, yeah. But Babylon, I was trying to say, it's a different map, different opportunity. You know, and this time around, Ryung doesn't start his series off with a failed proxy. All good things. I'm still trying to figure out what my cat did, by the way. I think my cat tried to fail getting up on my table. And I think he moved my boxes around in my obs. But again, assuming nothing is broken, the quality of the stream should be the same. So Ryung goes for a very typical 1-Rax expanse. Very typical indeed. And you're talking about typical macro games. I absolutely prefer Solar's style chances. I doubt Ryung is actually going to play straight up. I wouldn't mind it. You know, I don't think he's gonna look foolish for trying to do some type of 3cc 2-on-1 build, but I do think he's coming in as once again the underdog. The decider match curse isn't strong enough for this particular best of 3. He is going into a very typical 3cc build, by the way. So, yeah, maybe I don't mind it, but I still think it is going to end with a loss. I'm a real Debbie Downer here. I think his first push out might look promising, and his second push out might even look dangerous, and then it'll get squashed, and then Solar will overwhelm him. That is my expectation. Solar has no idea what his opponent's doing as of yet, but he's actually managed to sneak his Overlord into a sneak location, something that Solar sometimes never bothers doing. He'll play entire best of 7 series without ever putting his Overlord in a particularly tricky scouting location. He'll just literally leave it right here and be like, that's good enough. Which oftentimes it is. But in this case, you kind of guarantee the scouts. Literally already did enough scouting for right now by seeing the second gas timing. Timing like that, it can only be a 3rd CC. And then you might not know if it's a 1-1-1 or 2-1-1, but that's not super important since you know they're doing a 3cc build. It's not going to hit you particularly hard. I'm using the word particular a lot lately. I don't know why. But anyways, Hellions into Banshees. Yes, so normal. So normcore, man. And will it be Cloak as well? Oh! A Raven. Hey, something different. I like it. Alright then. Special did show a really cool build versus Dark in their game 1 of their series in the last group. Double Raven. It was after a forward barracks opener and a factory expand, if I remember correctly. So it's not that build, but it was still pretty cool how it went to 2 Ravens and then it harassed a lot and... Didn't it? Didn't it? That's what it did? And then it went into some type of drop as well, I believe. It was a pretty cool build. Very cool series, Dark versus Special. You didn't go see that. Overlord gets that full-on scouts. It sees no add-on researching. Either one. So you know it's not Cloak. And that could mean 2 things. Well, no, that could mean 1 thing, actually. Well, it could mean 2 things. It could mean a safety Banshee just popped out, because I'm not sure he saw the Raven pop. Or it could mean a Raven, which it is. And then he also knows that it could be a mech play. It probably won't be. You know, like some people would trick you after this particular scout. Damn, I did it again. But it's probably not. So drone. I don't know what happened up here. Looks like a drone died. And so far, Ryung is playing a perfect game. That feels nice. That is 8 Hellions and a Raven and a Liberator. A lot of pressure applied to the front lines and a good old backstab on the back. The Raven could clear up the creep spread, go for an auto turret, or even an interference matrix, as queens are psionic. Unless I've completely misremembered. Things I don't confidently say on a bigger broadcast. Because I'm like, wait, when's the last time I saw that happen? It's been a while. No one interference matrices queens. Liberator does get sieged up. Actually, there was very little pressure. It was because Solar was applying pressure. Solar got excited at the Lings entering into Ryung's natural. So excited he didn't watch his natural. That's funny. So 4 for 4. And the Liberator escapes very healthy, fully healthy indeed. And the Hellions just right back to it. Right back on the front lines. Baneling on the way as Solar does go into the typical macro 1-1 Ling Baneling setup, and he was also in preferring to go into those Hydras, and that's what I expect here today. Well, he might go only Lings, he might go Hydras. Point is, no Spire. Definitely not Spire, something that just is kind of out of TVZ at this point in time. 1-1's also on the way for Ryung, who did go for a very nice macro build. No complaints. Don't think he messed up the build at all that I was paying attention to. Didn't get supply block, was very close to it. Yeah, seems good to me. And his Hellions are continuing to do some damage. Nice little wraparound on the Queen, but the transfuses of her gals, or gal pals, ended up saving her life. Liberator comes back in, something that Solar just saw the glimpse of, I believe, with the Overlord, so his Scorcrawler went to the wrong position. I was kind of guessing. And this is nice harassment. I mean, there really are no complaints right now from Ryung's aggression. Nice Hellion aggression with the Raven, Liberator continuing to live on and do more damage in the future. And even though there was 1 Ling run by, it was almost not, it wasn't beneficial, but it was a wash because Solar got distracted by his own success. Ruined by his own success. It's a very promising game for Ryung. I'm gonna say though, if Ryung does end up defeating Solar in the GSL round of 16, that would be extremely disappointing for Solar. Solar really, really has a solid chance in this group, just looking at the players that are in it. Kira was going to be a problem, and it definitely was a problem. Kira played very, very well. Oh, wait, we just went down. But even then, I'd say that was okay of a matchup for Solar. And then for Solar Ryung, it really should favor Solar. His run by is unsuccessful, and the attack is commencing. It's continuing on, despite the loss of the Raven, as the Hellions distracted, looks like. Solar is a little all over the place, but I think overall he has the army. Oh, a couple of cheeky snipes. Ryung showing off a little bit. Of course, not actually. He just really did want to kill Banelings. But still, this is kind of nice. I like it. Getting some Beyond feels going on right now. As he looks to cancel a potential 4th base. It's the only reason he's racing over here, just in case there was like a drone waiting. There was not, so he is forced to pick up, and his medevacs have yet to heal the Marines, so when they unload, they have to be awfully careful. Fortunately, Solar doesn't see this. Oh, easy, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Yeah! Quick cancel, though. Good on Solar. Attack on the right side is now Marines, not Hellions, of which they all died, by the way. They got surrounded. Queens are caught by their lonesome. 2 of them will go down. Those are the high-energy Queens. So Solar could not save them this time around, and this is solid pressure, but at the end of the day, you look at the supply, you look at the overall situation, and it's really not bad for the Zerg player. 5 bases set up with a 6th finally actually on its way, 83 drones. Ryung is on 4 bases, 80 SCVs himself, 2 factories, pumping out 2 tanks at a time, moving on 2 Marauders. A very nicely played game for Ryung, who didn't have the awkward starts of the failed proxy or the, I would say, substandard 2-base 2-1-1 to work with like he did in the first game of their first series. This is so much more promising and makes me a little bit excited. I'm not cheering for Solar to lose. I just like, the interesting result is more interesting. And to me, Ryung winning is the more interesting result. Solar has moved into Hydras as well as a Lurker Den. Hive is on the way as well. Ryung, though, is clearly setting up for the late game. We didn't really get to see his potential late game, more turtle-style Terran because he died before we really got there. He never even got his 4th base settled. So now we get to see it in full force. 4th base settled as a planetary tank sieged up. SimCity on the way. And the SimCity right now being those extra command centers. 2-2 finishes for him. And if he starts up 3-3, he will hold on to that lead. No, he will not. It's actually very, very close. 3-3 for both parties. Soon. Solar making sure to prioritize the Carapace. Oh, and actually going into the missile. The adrenal gland certainly should come down. There it goes. And there it goes. 4 Marauders at a time. Also, the ability to make ghosts. Ghost Academy is done. Little missile turret for some run-bys, I suppose. Like Overlords getting into position. Is probably a worthy 100 mineral cost. That is a lot of bio and not a lot of Banelings. In fact, 0 right now is this base is just a goner. Solar's creep spread not that advanced to see such a push. Had to respond from being all the way over the top right. A little Ling action on the right side and Changeling. Sees the attempted 5th base. Can he actually stop it, though, is the question. I don't think he'll be able to fully stop it, but it looks like right now he'll at least halt it further. And the attack on the left is looking to once again cancel that hatchery while it's still low on health, or maybe perhaps get at least a couple of queens would be nice. Would be nice. Not gonna find the queens, and oh, the queens almost find the medevac. 3 ghosts are around, and I expect many more to come. Blue Flame as well, as Ryung, I'm sure, is very up to date on the meta. I think as far as conceptually, Ryung understands all the matchups to a very high degree, so this is not too surprising. He is, after all, basically a full-time pro, so it's not like he'd be coming back and missing out on the development of the late-game TVZ, which the freshest development, it's fresh, it's hot and fresh, is the basically mech transfer. So tanks and hellbats and ghosts. And possibly even Thors, if you go really, really, really late. So Ryung's on top of it. As I was saying, that 5th does remain to be seen. Yeah, it should happen, though. It should happen eventually. I mean, through sheer force of will, Ryung should get that 5th base up and running. Solar is trying his hardest to stop that. Cracking the 4th base might be a little more difficult. Great EMP on that one Viper. No blinding clouds involved, but a couple of the forward command centers will lose their lives. Tanks also getting jumped upon by some of these Lings, and the SCV is forced to run away from the Banelings as the army already has. And you know what? That was actually a fairly solid crackdown. This base will be repaired up and instantly replace the 4th, so the good news is it's a very quick recovery. But the bad news is that was a pretty efficient trade for Solar, who delayed the mining further because his 5th base still is not up and running. Did kill a decent amount of units, tanks specifically, and has a very healthy bank. So it's not like this was a necessary win for him like it was in the Cure game that he played earlier. Now, he is swimming in cash, very comfortable for a reserve player, also has the options of perhaps going into Lurkers, I would say, this game. I don't think you actually do, though. Yeah, I mean, the option is there. Literally, he has made the option for him, but I don't think he will go into Lurkers. Perhaps should he kill more ghosts in this upcoming attack. However, this time around, most of the army on the front of the tank line means that this is a little bit more of a sus engagement, and Solar has so much army to the bottom left as well, looking to run by to the 3rd base. This particular 3rd base is protected by a planetary. Tank and sensor tower and supply depots makes this a very solid setup. But it also kind of screams the Terran player is not going to try and take the left base. So Solar can continue investing into breaking the right side. And here comes the big old surround. Some snipes trying to go off here, but I think the bio needs to focus on getting the hell out of the surround. The SCV's pulled into the action at the wrong time. Oh, no. 11 SCVs go down. Medivac only saves a handful of ghosts, and Solar's attacks seem to be doing the trick. Again, his max potential is up there, where Ryung is now pretty much broke. He has lost so many SCVs and had to replace them so often. The Hydras look to be killing this 5th base as well. Even at the cost of their lives, it's still worth it, I think. I think actually they could go ahead and sacrifice themselves to ensure the death, but they might have gotten it's burned down anyways. Ryung is not even replacing SCVs at this point. He can't. He's trying to get a drop to the bottom left again, which has been a bit of a sore point for Solar, but not sore enough. Solar's still able to remax consistently. Although he's not remaxing right now. That's because it's a larva issue, actually. Looks like his queens have died too frequently in this game, so if you don't have larva, you're going to need some higher quality units, less dependent on the larva. So what are those? That would be Hydras and Lurkers. No, Hydras and Lurkers. Oh my god, he accidentally EMP'd his own Medivacs. Did you guys see that? Yeah, I think he did. I think he did. Wow. Anywho, the Lurkers are generally not a great idea to try and bust a very defensively well set up Terran player who is on 5 bases with planetaries, tanks, and ghosts. Then Lurkers aren't necessarily the most useful. But in this situation, I think they are very useful indeed. Solar going to just jump on top of the encroaching Terran army and take care of it, no problem whatsoever, as even the snipes are denied as the burrow came into effect. And Ryung is unfortunately still dead in this game. This was far more promising than the games in their first series, in my opinion, but end result's the same. GG should be coming down any second. So 5th base gets destroyed. 4th base now in Solar's sights, as Ryung's only response right now is a 6 Marine drop on top of that hatchery. You can do it, guys. You can bring it back. I believe. Just kidding, I don't believe anymore. 60 supply difference as Ryung now is counting pennies to replace his army. He cannot get above 100 army supply, which he really needs to do. Should he be able to max out on 44 SCVs, we know that the army then would be very intimidating, but he cannot max out. Doesn't even have many minerals to mule drop on at this point. Oh, I really like this. Oh, it's such a good attempt to stop from Nidus Worm Overlord drop harassment, but Solar didn't even bother to do that in this game. You can get a Nidus Worm? Nah. Well, Ryung is going to finally try and take this bottom left base. As I said, this kind of setup here really screams his intention was to go to the top right. As he takes... This is actually one of the better fights that Ryung's taken, it feels like. But of course, the supplies remain in favor of Solar as his max out is there. And oh, that wasn't his whole entire army, was it? That's the lurkers were missing. Alright, that makes more sense. Yep. Alright then. Solar's very, very good. Very, very good. And Ryung, even if his TVZ was up to the level of his other matchups, I'd still say that he would be one of the weaker players coming to the round of 16. And he would have a good chance against the likes of an Astrea or a Special, possibly a Creator or a Classic. Maybe even a Surprise Sniper when it comes to some of the TVTs, like versus like a Dream. Wait, Dream? Bunny. I don't know why I was thinking Dream. Wow, I haven't thought about that in a long time. Like Bunny, but yeah, TVZ is just going to be so difficult for him. Cheering for him. I'm hoping that he can surprise us, but Solar is now one game away from advancing to the round of 8s. In the bottom right of Gressvon, it is Solar. In the top left, it is Ryung. I did mention in the last game, you know, at least Babylon's a little bit different, so that's, you know, that's good. But you know, Gressvon also had an abusive tank spot. Didn't really matter. Zerg players have gotten used to dealing with this, and Solar dealt with it fine. What Ryung could try to do is something like what Cure was doing. Go into the 4 racks and try to control Solar. But to then replicate everything else that happened in the Cure Solar game would be extremely difficult. If only it were so easy to look at a game and say I can do all of that. The exact same. You cannot. Most of the time, you cannot. If the 4 racks would win right off the bat, the 2 base 4 racks would just go ahead and win, well then great, fantastic. I mean, that might actually be easy, but now the rest of that game that played out, the mid and late game, would be so hard to replicate. And Ryung certainly isn't going to be going into the 4 racks, at least the same fashion that Hero did. He is once again going to try and proxy his barracks on Gressvon, this time putting it in a location that is guaranteed not to be scouted. Last time he put it here, and actually quite coincidentally by the looks of it, Solar scouted it. Wait, where did he put it? I'm kind of confusing myself. They flipped the positions, didn't they? The barracks was like here. The equivalent would be here. Yeah, I'm right. Right? Am I right? It's hard to tell. My memory's not as good as it used to be. But the point is, Solar definitely doesn't scout this one. And it is going to be into Reapers by the looks of it. Now, I'm very interested into what the second barracks being proxied actually means. So I guessed that because it is proxied, we might have 5 Reapers instead of 3. But is 5 really that much more difficult to deal with? I'd actually say no. You know, logically, it's more units, more firepower, should be harder to deal with. Even if it is something you can deal with. But I would say, for a lot of modern Zergs, no. I don't think more Reapers better or slightly faster second Reaper better either. Happy to be proven wrong. We do have further committal of the Reaper production. It is certainly different. First grenade's pretty good. Results in the loss of two lings. Okay, there we go. As well as a drone that died. That drone's about to die. Queen's still not out. 2 drones killed, 2 lings killed. Is that victory enough? No, of course not. And it is going into 4 Reapers. And then maybe perhaps that's it. I guess 5, but you know, 4, I'm sure, whatever. Yeah, it is only 4. And then this barracks is a scouting tool? Okay. I would really love to hear Ryung's thoughts on why this works out so well. To me, this really doesn't look that different from a 2 racks back at home into 3 Reapers. The 4th Reaper does not seem to be doing a whole lot more. Perhaps the actual Ling deaths are higher, and so I'm not giving that enough credit. 3 drones have also go down. I guess to be fair, oftentimes the 2 racks at home with 3 Reapers does often only find like 1 drone. 1 drone and maybe 4 links. Because, again, Zergs are so much better at dealing with this. But I'd still say that this doesn't necessarily, you know, equalize the amounts given to the build, to the damage that is actually done. And I'll talk about why in a second as we watch the Reapers die, question mark? And try and keep them going as long as possible, but eventually the Reaper should die as speed is finished. What the hell am I doing? So the reason I don't think that was really quite worth it is because what the 2-Rex does, besides go for the additional Reapers, is that it gives your build a lot of ambiguity, which is something I've harped on many times at this point. So they don't know if you're going into 2 racks or 4 racks, 2-1-1, 3 racks, 4 racks, 5 racks, 3rd CC, 2 CC. You could actually go mech behind the 2 racks. But I guess then it would be more obvious because the 2 racks would not have add-ons actually researching. Although you could probably fake that as well for a little bit of time. Thank you, Joe, for the raid. So I guess what Ryung is doing is basically giving up the ambiguity of like 2-1-1, 4 racks, whatever, and instead just making it generally ambiguous from the factory. Because you still don't know if it's 2 starport or 2 extra factories or a 3rd CC. And he's getting a little bit of that aggression early on. So maybe I do like it. I'm like... Because it really is just between the proxied 2nd barracks and the 2 racks at home. That is the only thing I'm comparing these things to, right? But it is a stim fake on the way. Like I said, you could probably convince a little bit further. As the Overlord goes down, it did not see the factories, and I don't believe it saw the gas geysers either. So a very unfortunate scout there, and Ryung is trying to replicate a little bit of Kira's success from the last series by going into this relatively quick battle mech. Now, it is relative, because, you know, it's still off of 3cc, no starport. But it's not as quick, I believe, as Kira's, right? Because Kira went really right into a greedy build. 3cc immediately into the 3 factories, no Reaper shenanigans to start things off with. So it's fast, but not as fast as Kira's. It's... He's not canceling sim. Oh, okay. So he was waiting for another Ling Scout? That's actually quite clever. I suppose if the 100-100 isn't taking away your production, then you can go ahead and continue faking it. But that, you know, do keep in mind that that is 75% of a factory, whatever percentage it is. Like it does delay something. But it does eventually get canceled, and it did its job. Solar has so far seen nothing but evidence of bio play with some Hellion defense to help out. I do not believe he's seen the Cyclones or anything else that tells him that it is battle mech, but as I'm saying that, he actually did get a Roach Warren, so it looks like he was at least paranoid of it. Perhaps thinking, okay, I don't know what you're doing. This is not like a 2 racks follow-up into 3 or 4 racks. There is a potential for a battle mech follow-up, and you did just witness me lose to Cure in very similar fashion. That might be what Solar was reading into, because otherwise I really don't think he scouted what he needed to see that it was battle mech. Wow, good on Solar then to be a little paranoid, because that paranoia really paid off. Roaches will help stem the hold off on the momentum. I mean, Ryung might still gather momentum if he takes enough decent trades and really applies the pressure well, but it would hold off on it. Perhaps also the 2nd barracks being used only for scouting was also a little sus. Whatever Solar saw to tip him off, it's a good thing it did, as I think the roaches coming out when it did also helped. He now has a lot of roaches, not just on the defense, but some going for a run-by too, which is forcing Ryung to respond, and the more that the Cyclones and Hellions are not on Solar's side of the map, the more that Solar can establish a solid Zerg economy and a solid Zerg army against battle mech. At this point in time, Cure has already won, basically, the battle mech game. And it's definitely not the case here for Ryung. Lee, thank you for the 11 months. We watched some Cyclones chase down the counter run-by roaches, rather. This might mean the roaches don't seem to be doing a whole lot, but trust me, they are. And actually, kind of leading into a bit of a pseudo-surround. Solar was looking for even more of a trap than it ended up being, but the point is, now the Cyclones are on Ryung's side of the map. Whenever they retreat, whenever they take the lock-ons and then back away. They're backing away from defending their SCVs and their production and their infrastructure. So it's not a good thing. If they try to defend, let's say over here, like these reinforcing cyclones trying to be doing, then they don't have enough room to maneuver. They don't have enough room to escape. And so all of this just favors Solar tremendously. It's not that Ryung can't eventually take care of the roaches, it's that its entire playstyle revolves around not being at home. It's supposed to be non-stop action on Solar's side of the map, taking fights, controlling the fights, and kind of making the Zerg feel like a fool. At this point now it is Solar making Ryung feel like a fool because he just cannot get the Cyclones to do what they need to do. They are not doing the job that they signed up for. Just being super offensive. And Solar is just rallying roaches across the map on 4 base, 65 drones. He's really not all that rich, and Ryung does have 4 bases set up, so if Ryung could just freaking stabilize, things would look much better for him. But nonetheless, all of the damage taken on the economy, plus all of the damage taken to his Cyclone potential counts, because so many reinforcing units died, I still think that Solar has given himself way too much wiggle room to actually fail here. You know, he could add on the drones now. In fact, he just did 73 drones. And he could add on the infestors, which he actually did. He could get to his burrow, which he is getting to. So he has a lot of room to play with. Ryung needs to stabilize ASAP, which would probably also mean going to the tanks, honestly. But he cannot do so. He needs to apply some more pressure. His factory's locked up in Cyclone production, which if they take ideal fights, might be okay. But it's really not ideal anymore, as the Lings are also causing some trouble. The numbers of the Zerg player are just too high for the numbers of the Terran Cyclone Hellion mech, and yeah, we're just watching the fizzle out. The fizzle! It's happening. Ryung tried his best to catch Solar off guard, or play a straight-up good game. Both did not work. Solar takes the 2-0 yet again and will advance on to the round of 8. Perhaps the expected players moving on here, Cure and Solar. Happy to see that there is a little bit more, I guess, guesswork. There's a little bit more of like, well, hold on, like, let's see. Than there could have been. Astrea vs. Cure was actually a little bit cooler than I expected. Astrea vs. Ryung also was a lot back and forth, and Ryung did have some moments. But overall, I do believe the expected victors here did win, and because they are such solid players, they're not just better today, I would say that they're better and more consistent overall. So only on a particularly good day for Astrea or Ryung would they have changed the dynamics of this group. Sucks for the fans of Astrea and Ryung, but great news for the fans of Cure and Solar. You'll once again see them in the round of 8, starting, I believe, next week, which of course I'll cast once the replays are out. But for now, that's it. Thanks for watching, and please like, subscribe, follow all the good stuff if you're watching this on YouTube. Bye-bye.